Hello, everyone, and welcome to Small Screen Star Wars. As always, I am Julian Musha. I'm joined by Rachel Wilkinson.
Hey!
And we are back. We're covering Ahsoka for this season. And for those who might be around for our Mando coverage for Mando Season 3, you know that Rachel was pretty busy over the last few months since
I have
we
been busy.
were gone.
Yeah, I had my baby boy, so he's the best.
That's what they all say.
I know. He's the cutest, he's the smartest, he's, he's the best baby that's ever been created, obviously.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Right.
My little, you know what? This is the perfect audience for it. His name is Wiley Ben. And yes, it is a Star Wars reference. It is. Most people miss it because I've had so many people be like, "Oh, I'm surprised you didn't name him anything Star Wars." I'm like, "Haha, I did."
I did. Ben, silly, duh, hello.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. But you wouldn't know because only the real OGs would get it. So
right.
So yes, I did name my baby after Obi-Wan Kenobi. So deal with it, everybody.
Well, yeah, you and Leia. So
yeah.
Anyway, it's good to have you back.
It's good to be back.
The show, the Small Screen Star Wars is really only on during these seasons of TV.
Yes.
And the last few years, it's been very dense with television content, right? With,
it has, yeah.
The 2 seasons of Bad Batch, plus Andor, plus 3 seasons of The Mandalorian, plus I'm forgetting some, I'm sure. Obi-Wan.
The last season of the Clone Wars we did.
The last season of the Clone Wars, right? So there's been so much, and if you've been following the news, as it relates to like Disney and their stockholders and all that kind of stuff, they are going to be cutting back. We'll just say they felt like maybe we overdid it with all the content that we were that they were putting out, and they're gonna be cutting back a little bit. Right.
Okay.
So that they can squeeze more money out of you as a Disney Plus subscriber. That's basically the gist of it. I don't want to.
What?
Yeah. They're not gonna put out as much content, but they're gonna charge the same or more on a monthly basis.
I see.
So that they keep you on. I guess in theory you could just unsubscribe between the gaps. Now and make it a little bit easier on yourself, which I would recommend because they are getting more expensive. But that being said, it will give us more opportunity to do more ad hoc type episodes, which we've been meaning to do, but because of how dense these schedules have been, it's just like, where do you find the time? You know?
I got a little crazy there. So,
exactly.
Sorry I left you high and dry
on the last episode?
On the finale of Mando, but I couldn't do it. I had gotten home from the hospital the day before. So there was a lot going on.
All I'm hearing is excuses. That's what I'm hearing.
There was a lot of stress going on in this place for those few days.
Yeah,
it's way better now.
We'll allow it. I have done solo shows before. I feel like that solo one was pretty good, considering I was on the mic for like an hour and a half straight.
Yeah,
talking about that.
See, if it was the two of us, it would have been like a 3-hour show. So
yeah,
you're welcome,
probably.
Everybody.
But if we're being honest, Mando season 3 wasn't the best anyway, so it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
But fortunately, so far so good with Ahsoka. The first 2 episodes have premiered.
Yes.
It's a mini series, so presumably there's only the 1 season, though who knows, right? And they said the same thing for Obi-Wan, though they were talking about maybe having that come back as well. So far the quality's there, in my opinion. We'll get into the nitty gritty of it. So again, for those who may be new to the show, here's the format. We're going to give our overall impressions of the episode, full spoilers for all things Star Wars, so we'll mention things from Rebels and from the Clone Wars and from the prequels and the movies and potentially from the books and or comics, although I don't have as much of a knowledge on that stuff. There's just too much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and really the main stuff is all on some type of screen anyway, so, and we've seen all of that. So but that's all up for grabs from a spoilers perspective. And then we dive into a scene by scene breakdown. In this case, we'll do both episodes today as a special treat for our listeners. Although we had one of our Discord, one of our Patreon subscribers, our patrons, in the Discord, and of course you can get access to our private Discord as well by subscribing to our Patreon at patreon.com/TowerBabblecast. Small plug. But you can head over there, and again, one of our loyal listener supporters would mention that, hey, are you guys just doing one episode or two? And, in retrospect, I kind of think maybe we should have just done one, and we could have done maybe two today, and I could have just put out the second episode next week. But because I'm going to be gone on vacation next week, and we're going to have to figure out a way to make that work. So there will be no live stream next week. So for episode 3 of Ahsoka, there'll be no live stream, though there should be an episode in and around the same time, as we'll figure out a way to record on the road.
Yeah. You'll figure
There's just no way to stream from my phone. It can't be done.
Yeah.
Speaking of streaming, we've got a whole new stream set up for Small Screen Star Wars. It's now branded with Small Screen Star Wars, though there is a little bit of Tower Babble branding. If you're watching live, you'll notice this. I think promised a new theme song. I haven't got around to that. You know how hard it is to like sit around and listen to like stock music for hours and hours? It gets very tiring, and then I just didn't do it. It's really now I'm making excuses. But we'll get a theme song. We were talking before we started recording that there's no clear opening theme like there was for The Mandalorian and some of these other shows, but there is a good credits theme, so maybe we might use that for the intro.
Yeah.
For this, so we'll see. But anyway, listen for that on the actual podcast, which is probably how most of you are listening now. Anyway, is there any more housekeeping I need to do, Rachel? Have I touched on everything?
I don't think so. That's
okay.
That's everything.
All right. So, in spirit of the premiere here, there'll be a little bit more preamble than there would usually be before we get into the actual breakdown itself. There's a few things that we need to cover that I think are important framing for the season that we're going to be talking about.
Okay.
So we'll get into that. Before we do, though, quickly mention, head over to our website, towerbabble.ca. That's where you can find everything that we do. We have 2 main shows. We have the Tower Babble podcast and Small Screen Star Wars. TOB is much more generalized with just a more broad film and television scope. It's been a real downer lately because with the strikes on and inflation out of control, we've there's just been a lot to gripe about. So if you're looking for a nice bitch sesh where we just hear people complaining about the state of the world, the last episode of the Tower Babble podcast is probably for you, where Jeremy and I, our co-hosts on the Tower Babble podcast, kind of discuss the state of Hollywood, which again is not great. And I've alluded to that with the whole Disney Plus pulling back on content thing. We'll see what that means. Potentially, though, silver lining here, it could mean that the quality of the content improves, because I will say this, it was pretty rough there in the middle between Obi-Wan and Mando Season 3 and a few of these other things where it's like, man, it really feels like they cut some corners here, And I hope that's something. So far with Ahsoka, I don't feel that way.
No,
which is great. And obviously, Andor is perfect in all things and can never be criticized. But that was also great. So I mean, I think we've been relatively well off, but there has been some dips. And maybe this means less dips. Anyway, so let's get into this show, Ahsoka. So Ahsoka, this is obviously a spin-off of a spin-off of a spin-off, kind of, right? So Ahsoka Tano, the Padawan learner of Anakin Skywalker. I think I'm going to assume that if you're listening to this, you have cursory knowledge of who Ahsoka is. So I don't think we need to get into the deep lore background, or do you feel like we need to? I would hope
so. No, I mean, if you didn't do your research, that's on you.
Well, I mean, listen, I think that this is a part of people's research, to be fair.
Yeah.
So
that's fair.
But
I mean, it's not like this is the first time we're seeing her in live action, though, because we did see her in Mando. So, I mean, I guess obviously it wasn't as big of, not that it wasn't as big of a deal, but it wasn't her story in Mando. But I would assume most people who are invested in this show know who she is and are fans of her already from previous.
I think so. I think her introduction in Mandalorian Season 2, the episode titled The Jedi, goes a long way for the general audiences who probably didn't watch a lot of the animated stuff. I would say go back to that episode where we cover the Jedi in Small Screen Star Wars. I assume, I don't remember, but I assume we kind of gave a little more about an Ahsoka deep dive there and kind of talked about Rosario Dawson taking over for in the role in live action for Ashley Eckstein? Is that her
Eckstein,
name?
yeah, yes.
So
Yeah. I mean, even Disney Plus, if you have it, put out a you know how they make those little what would you call it, categories, and it was all
oh
Ahsoka
yeah,
related
for a
episodes.
story.
So
Hmm.
you could just kind of go through there, so you don't actually have to watch the entirety of the Clone Wars. But yeah,
Yeah, and there's a lot of I guess as in terms of like uh pre-watching material, saying you wanted to catch up on all things Ahsoka beforehand. There's a lot of different guides online that you can
yeah,
find about
yeah.
the kind of required reading, as it were, for Ahsoka. So the assumption here is that we're going to make throughout these breakdowns this season is that you know who she is, you have a cursory background of her story from Rebels in particular,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
Rebels, and
Watching
so this,
Rebels is kind of important,
I,
I can
I
see, for this show.
yeah, it feels that way. I mean, I am um not in a position to be able to judge whether or not this show works if you haven't seen Rebels.
Yeah. I just
And
mean,
it's
like,
hard for
there's
you, I'd imagine, too, to put yourself in that position.
yeah, that would be hard. I've watched Rebels so many times now that yeah, it's just it feels like it's just an extension of Rebels. So like you're not going to care about these characters as much as if you haven't watched Rebels. And you're not going to know how cool Thrawn is unless you've read some of his books. The Timothy
The
Zahn
Zahn books, yeah.
books.
Hmm.
Then you'll have a bit of an idea about Thrawn, but you kind of get a different Thrawn in Rebels anyway. Not a different one, but
Well,
it's
no, they do reimagine Thrawn for canon, right? So
mhm.
this is a character that was created for the what is now considered the extended universe of Star
Yeah,
Wars.
because that's canon, those books.
Not the ones from the 70s or 80s.
Oh no, no,
Yeah.
but I'm talking about like the newer.
Thrawn Ascendancy
Yeah,
and Thrawn
I'm almost finished those
something.
Ascendancy books, and then I think the Thrawn Alliance's books are also canon.
Yeah, so
I
those
believe.
are canon.
Yeah,
There's just different takes on how people feel about Thrawn, how they
yeah,
characterize
yeah.
him. In my opinion, he works best as a clear villain type character. Some
Ooh,
people like him as a like anti-hero type character.
I'm
I
one of
don't know.
those, so we're opposites there.
I
Because
well,
have you read the
I
books though?
the first one. I read
Yeah,
the first
you got to
one.
get more into them, and then you kind of get a little bit more. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
You
I find
start
like
to. I don't know.
I just can't bring myself to care about his Chiss ascendancy situation.
Fair enough.
It just like that. It feels like a bridge too far for me. But either way, we might learn a lot about the Chiss in this season of Ahsoka. So maybe I'll have to do some reading on that myself. Although I'm going to rely on you to help fill in those gaps.
All right. Well, I'll finish that book as fast as I can.
Okay, perfect.
The last one.
So that's the main question. So, question to you: do you feel like, and I guess there's no way to answer this, but do you feel like you need to have watched Rebels to enjoy the show?
Not to enjoy it, but I think you'll enjoy it more if you've watched Rebels.
Yeah,
Like
get the
you'll
most
care
out of
more.
it.
Yeah, you'll get the
Yeah.
most out of it. Exactly. There's already I don't know so much character building and stuff done in Rebels. Obviously, like why I don't know. I just feel like it's gonna be hard to like give a shit about who's Ezra Bridger. Why do we
Right.
care if he comes back? Who's
I
Thrawn?
already feel
Why
like
is he
that's a
so big and
problem
bad?
with this first episode, to some degree, because they name drop Ezra like 3 times in the first 5 minutes of the show, and I think that's cool because I went back and rewatched the season finale or the series finale for Rebels
Yeah,
before I
yeah.
watched the season premiere of Ahsoka, and boy, that finale hits hard. It's really good finale.
Yeah, it
and
is.
and Ezra has a very good presence in that finale, and his whole his whole farewell situation is interesting.
Yeah. Honestly, you could binge watch Rebels pretty quickly. Like it's I
There's
don't know.
4 seasons, and
Yeah.
they're
They're short, like short
relatively
episodes,
short.
It's yeah. You could binge watch it in probably 2 weeks.
Yeah, just don't get turned off by the visual style. That's my you have to push through
Yeah.
that. You have
Yeah.
to push through that. I will admit, I know I've been very hard on it, especially in comparison to the current, what we get from Lucasfilm Animation today is like jaw-droppingly, stunningly gorgeous.
Yes, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And when you put that up frame to frame up against Rebels, it looks like dog crap. But Rebels does. But in and of itself, on its own, completely separated from anything else, watching the season finale, the series finale, it looked fine.
Yeah.
It still feels very plain, and I would just like a little bit more detail. But
Yeah.
what can you do? What can you do? That was, different times back then. This was the first show, by the way, that came out, first piece of media that came out Star Wars related that was under the Disney umbrella after the Disney acquisition. So it had a lot to live up to at that time. I think it was aimed at a younger audience, and I think that's obvious when you watch the show. But there's some very heavy themes in there.
Yeah, it's like there's heavy stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it gets, and especially I'd say the first season's a little tougher, but by the time you get through the first season, similar to Clone Wars,
that's like Clone Wars.
It really gets a lot easier.
Yeah.
And there's some really good story arcs in there, and how it ties into the larger world building is important. So again,
I would say watch it. There's some cool shit in it, and yeah.
Encouraged. I would encourage you to watch Rebels, even if it's tough from an animation standpoint. You're going to get more out of it, but we'll do our best to fill in the Rebel stuff,
yes,
somewhat here as we go, because again, assuming that most people have seen the live action stuff and not the animated stuff. By the way, if that's you, do yourself a favor and pick up the animation. It's great. Okay. Especially the Bad Batch. I just can't really speak highly enough about Bad Batch. I think it's top tier animation stuff. Some of the best animated programming in years. All right, so that is some preamble. I don't know if there's anything else we expect audiences to have seen. Rebels is really the main one. If you've seen Mando and you've learned who Ahsoka is through that, I think that gives you enough background. Former Jedi who walked away from the Order and then kind of survived throughout all these years. Now we're post Return of the Jedi. She's still around and hanging out now with a droid from Clone Wars. But we'll get to that when we get into the episode itself. Okay, so overall impressions. I think this will be pretty obvious as we do the recap. But what was your impression of this 2-part season premiere, Rachel?
Oh, I thought it was great. I had such a fun time watching it, and I mean, it's nostalgic almost for me too, because you're seeing all these characters that you already grew to love. At least I grew to love in Rebels. To getting to see them live action, and there's just so many small details that they threw in that are like gonna sound stupid when I bring them up later, but just things that I noticed. I'm like, oh, I see. Like, I see you, costume designer. Like, I saw that little like thing you did there, and just I don't know, some really neat stuff. And I don't know. Overall, I just thought it was a really strong opening couple episodes. Like, I already care. I'm invested, and I care about the story. So,
yeah, I basically feel the same way. Less the nostalgia side, mostly because I do feel like there is some inconsistencies with characterization in that transition to live action. Hera in particular sticks out as being something's not quite right, and maybe it's just purely the voice that I'm missing.
It's hard, and I was kind of pinpointing that too because there's a few things. Yeah, I can agree with that.
Sabine though, spot on.
Sabine's great. Honest, yeah, she's great. I get it, but it's just some things are hard, especially when you talk about Rebels animation and the way they did the animation in that too.
Totally.
I think that makes it a little bit harder because Hera's eyes in the animation are like huge, right?
Yes.
She's these huge, big green eyes, and like that's kind of hard to pull off of like a real normal human.
Yeah, it's
right?
unless it's Alita Battle Angel, in which case very cool looking, but
yes.
But different whole thing. Yeah.
And the voice is obviously quite different too, but I had to just kind of get over it, and I just had to tell myself I had to get over it. And I was like, it was the same thing with me and Ahsoka, like because it was Rosario Dawson's voice is obviously not the same.
Nothing similar. Yeah.
It's not similar, yeah, but she's older, right? So I can kind of play it off as like your voice changes as you get older, right?
Sure.
So,
yeah, no, that's fair.
So yeah, I kind of just I had to do that in my brain too a little bit and just accept that that's how Hera is going to sound. So
yeah, and yeah, again, nothing against
no
anyone who's playing these characters. It's just we have a preconceived notion in our head, so I think it's probably easier if you haven't seen it to pick these characters up from where they're introducing them to us here. But I'm looking, I'm looking extra close. They're under a microscope for me, so I can see the little subtle similarities to and there's some moments that stand out as being, that's a very uniquely Hera thing or a very uniquely Ahsoka thing or whatever that feels true to the character from that animation world. And again, I think Sabine they totally nail. And Tasha Liu Bordizzo crushes it as Sabine. I think they totally nail that. But overall, I agree. I think they really nailed it from a tone perspective.
Yeah.
It really walks the line, and I think this is Dave Filoni doing some of his best work here from in that space. And I know live action is relatively new for him, but I think he does a pretty good job. The first episode, by the way, written and directed by Dave. Of course, created the character from Clone Wars alongside George Lucas, and I just think that it balances the kind of the heavier stuff and the lighter stuff really well. It does probably land a little bit on the heavier side, all things considered. This is much heavier than Rebels for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But still has the right mixture for a Star Wars to work. The feeling I've gotten in perusing Twitter and all that kind of stuff to kind of get the general sense of impressions is I think people feel like it feels like Star Wars. Not everything of Star Wars feels that way. For better or for worse, this does hit that for me. I love the kind of space race kind of driving plot that we get. I think it really adds a lot of exciting stakes and creates a sense of urgency that's really, I think, missing maybe sometimes from some of these shows where it's like, it's nice to hang out with these characters, but it would be nicer if there was kind of something driving this plot a little bit. And this kind of space race to get to find the map and get to this other planet and then get to this other galaxy is, I think, really interesting. It provides a lot of interesting mystery and intrigue to the whole thing, and so far I'm on board with that.
Me too, especially because that's kind of, I think, where we said Mando fell a little flat with season 3.
Oh yeah,
where it was 100%. Just kind of like, well, like what is the underlying story?
What are we even doing here?
It's exactly. So I'm glad we have something where you just immediately know where the show's going, what the mission is, and why it's now we have to go, right? So
yeah, and I would say this show looks really good. I think there's been mixed results with use of the volume, which of course is the technology, that like giant LCD screen technology that they use, invented kind of for the Mandalorian, and Obi-Wan used it to probably less effectively than Mando has used it in the past. And there's a mixture of it here with some real sets and some other things that I think balance it out well. I think it looks really good, especially the space scenes. We get some really cool starship stuff in here that I think has been missing and that's been a big part of what's been missing, by the way, I think, from some of the Star Wars stuff. Not enough space stuff.
Yeah, fair enough.
In general. So we get a lot of that. I also think this is the first time we've got Kevin. I don't know if it's Kiner or Kinner. I think it's Kiner, so I'm going to go with that. Okay? And if I'm wrong, send us an email to towerbabblepodcast@gmail.com, or at me on Twitter @towerbabblecast. So I've been following this guy's work since he started scoring music in the Clone Wars, obviously kind of remixing a lot of what was originally created for the original trilogy, right, with John Williams. And then with Rebels, he came back for that, and he had this difficult mission of wanting to use some more of the main themes that we know from the original trilogy, but not wanting to give us too much. So he remixed those again, kind of led into it. And by the time you get to the series finale of Rebels, you are just getting, core themes, like the Force theme appears, and other similar themes start to pull in together as we approach that original trilogy timeline, which I think is a fascinating way of approaching the musical side of things. This is his first time doing live action. And by the way, he also does The Bad Batch, and the season 2 finale of The Bad Batch from a musical perspective is like a masterclass in scoring. It's so beautiful. And we now get to see Kevin Kiner's work being used in live action for the first time. And I have to assume that we'll get to see his work on the big screen when we get that Heir to the Empire movie in a few years. Because I think he's earned it. He's the, Thrawn might be the heir to the Empire, but Kevin Kiner is the heir to John Williams when it comes to Star Wars music, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, he did a great job with Ahsoka so far. That was one thing.
Yeah.
And I never, not that I never, but not as much as you do I notice the scores as well. And this one I noticed immediately. I was like, oh, like this sounds like real Star Wars
Well, right from the
music.
first scene,
Mm-hmm.
you get this very percussive, with some piano notes. It's just really, and it's deconstructed. I've watched a video about it already, but it's this kind of deconstruction of some of the themes that we already know, being kind of retooled for these purposes,
Mm-hmm.
and it really works. I think the music is as important as the visuals for the Star Wars feel, in my opinion. Which is why for the Mandalorian, that kind of new age vibe that we get from that from those themes, which are from Goranson, I think, right? Are great, really interesting and new, but don't have that classical feel to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And where Kevin Kiner comes in, he really brings that classical feel, that original trilogy almost inspired feel to it. And it's really brilliantly. And when you talk about scoring, it's about kind of attaching it to the visuals, right? So it's really brilliantly, weaved in with the story and what's happening on screen in a really great way. It reminds me a lot of John Williams' work from The Last Jedi, which I think is some of John Williams' best work in Star Wars, where he's really hitting notes and punctuating moments that are happening on screen with the music. And again, this infiltration scene at the beginning of the first episode with where they're kind of boarding that ship is really great. I think it's a great example of how he can bring that feel. And then, of course, he starts being able to get to use his musical themes that he created that were entirely unique to him for Rebels. So he has a Hera theme, and he has themes for these other characters. Hera's theme is the most unique. Maybe not unique is the right word, but it's the one that stands out the most because it sounds a lot like Leia's theme.
It does. I was gonna say, I'm like, it sounds so much like, not so much, but a lot like Leia's theme. Yeah.
So, and that's probably intentional. There's obviously parallels
Yeah,
between Hera and they're both generals after all, and
Mhm.
Leia. But anyway, I just wanted to call that out now, and just get that out of the way at the top. So again, I think it's very good so far. I think the second episode's a little weaker than the first. I think the first episode's really, almost perfect. And yes, there's some. I think it's very deliberately paced, which means it can sometimes feel slow at times. But I think it's intentional. That it wants you to sit with these characters a little bit more. It's not really cutting away as quickly as it maybe could, or some maybe would like it to, but it's really letting you sit with these characters a bit longer. And I think that gives it a very purposeful or deliberate pacing that I think is appreciated. So that's our overall impressions. Let's get in. We have lots to cover. Before we do though, I want to mention that I've been saving this Ahsoka Black Series action figure, 6-inch action figure, for opening on the show. So I'm going to open this now.
Okay.
I also got a few more. So on Amazon Prime Day, a little tip for those collectors out there who like the Black Series figures as much as I do. There's always a few Black Series figures on sale for Amazon Prime Day. So I grabbed a few. They're only ever a couple bucks off, but that's still better than what you would normally get. I got a Dark Trooper from Mando Season 2. So I'm pretty stoked about that. If you're watching live, you can see that on the camera. So Dark Trooper, this one's a really cool one. A little bit larger than the regular pieces, which I think gives it a kind of cool feel to it. And then, again, I have Ahsoka. And then I'm saving the last one that I got, which is a Echo action figure from the Bad Batch for, I guess, Bad Batch Season 3, whenever we're blessed with that. I might not have the patience to wait that long. Anyway, I'm gonna pop her out here with her lightsabers, and it's it's appropriate because she is really basically wearing the same clothes she was wearing from Mando Season 2.
Yes.
So it really works. So anyway, this is I'll fiddle with this during the show, but it's got her kind of like Japanese style pants, going.
Yes. Yeah. I believe I have her because I think they only have one Black Series Ahsoka, right?
I'm not sure if that's true. This
No?
one for sure, I've seen around a lot, but I feel like there might be previous ones from other iterations of the character. I mean, Black Series has been around for a long time.
That's true. Yeah, I know I think I have the same one you do. Yeah, I have I have like a couple Black Series figures, but most of them belong to Adam, and he
Okay.
has a crap ton of them.
Yeah, I almost exclusively buy characters that have helmets on because usually the face
Yes.
sculpts look stupid. But I gotta admit, this one, which I can't really get without it being out of focus, this Ahsoka one, the sculpt is really, really good, and it really looks almost exactly like Rosario Dawson, even at.
That's the only bad thing about buying them on Amazon is you can't be that person that is going looking through all of them on the shelves to find the ones that look the best. Because there is differences between them, like the painting and the face shape, kind of not the face shape, but you know what I mean. Some of them just
Yeah,
look
like
better than
sometimes you
others.
just get there's that have smudges or whatever.
Yes, yeah. So yeah,
Yeah, no, I
you
I
can't be a
100%
hardcore
agree.
collector on Amazon
So does
because they'll
she
just
have
send you one.
does she hold her long lightsaber in her right hand or left hand?
The long one is in her right hand.
A right hand. Okay, perfect. That's
Yes,
good.
I
That's where I
believe.
put it. Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to be accurate.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that if you're not a Black Series collector, I understand it can be daunting to get into that. But hey, look, we got a little Ahsoka here. She'll be
Oh,
watching over
especially
us.
because if they're really popular ones and like they're hard to find. Like there's so many
Yeah.
that are, and then if you do find them, it's like, oh, do you want to buy this figure? It was $39.99, but now it's 120
Yes,
because
it's a pain in the ass for me.
yeah,
I've been so you know what's surprisingly hard to find?
Grievous.
Well, Grievous, yes, but I was saying surprisingly hard to find,
Oh,
which is regular, just a plain ass stormtrooper.
oh,
Is so
interesting.
hard. Is really hard because I guess people buy them up in bulk so they can like do
Oh,
cool like scenes and stuff or whatever. But
fair.
I have two that I got from. It was like they're not like original series stormtroopers. They're from the game. They're from Jedi Fallen Order.
Okay.
But they're still regular stormtroopers to me.
Yeah.
So they work, and I have them alongside my Vader from New Hope. So I got my collection grows. I'm a big fan of the clone troopers. I want to collect as many as the clone troopers as I can.
Those ones are hard to find, and those ones are expensive when you look for them online.
Yeah, well, especially like the commander
Yeah.
ones. I have a few ones. I have my Rex, which is easy to come by, and I have a Cody that's pretty cool, and a few more commando, and stuff like that. But I would love. Listen, if you have a line on a good price on Black Series clone troopers, you let me know. I want to get on that. All right, okay. Let's get into this after that little break. Okay, so we should start with season 1, episode 1, part 1, Master and Apprentice. This comes in at 56 minutes. I think this is a perfect length for a Star Wars episode. Really bugged me that the Mando episodes were only coming in at like half an hour.
Yeah.
You really feel kind of shortchanged a little bit sometimes with those. So it really gives you the opportunity to tell a fleshed out story. As I said before, deliberately paced. You don't have to rush through this because you have an hour. Written and directed by Dave Filoni, as I mentioned. Music by Kevin Kiner. The logline is: a valuable prisoner escapes from New Republic custody. A search for answers reunites two old friends. So we'll start with the intro sequence. This is before we even get into the episode itself. We get red coloring with a suspenseful. It says suspenseful on the subtitles. Suspenseful drums over the Lucasfilm logo. So the red coloring, reminiscent of the Clone Wars final arc in the Clone Wars series, was also all done in red, which it really gives it a menacing feel.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. We get the opening helmets that we always get with the lights that flash over them. These are all in red. So in order of appearance: Vader, 3PO, Clone Commando. I think someone said it was just regular clone. I think it's a Clone Commando. We get HK droid, which is a hunter-killer droid. We saw those for the first time, I believe. Maybe not for the first time, but we saw them prominently in The Jedi, which is the season 2 episode of The Mandalorian. And I think they're super cool design, those HK droids. Yeah. We also saw the mask of this new Inquisitor, Marok, I can't remember how you say his name.
Merrick, I think.
Merrick, yeah. Hu Yang is also here. We get a classic Stormtrooper, Chopper, and Sabine's Mando helmet, I think.
I think it's Sabine's as well, yeah. That's
Although, in episode 2 it flashes red and not blue, so maybe it's normally it's like blue for the good guys, red for the bad guys,
Oh,
obviously.
okay.
But
Yeah.
in this case, it's all red. It's not clear, and then in the second episode, it goes back to red and blue, and that Mando helmet's in red. But that might just be a coincidence of how they've lined it up.
Yeah.
And then we get an opening crawl, which we haven't seen since any of the mainline Star Wars movies. And so I'm going to read an excerpt here from a Vulture article that specifically talks about the opening crawl. So Ahsoka's opening crawl is more than a mere recap. No prior Star Wars show began with a crawl. Not the Clone Wars, not Rebels, not The Mandalorian, not Andor, and not even Obi-Wan. A show whose core appeal seemed to have been, we got the movie stars back for this one.
Yeah.
Rogue One and Solo even didn't feature crawls. Opening with a crawl, albeit a slightly different one, places Ahsoka on rarefied ground. This, after all, is the first time that a character who made their debut in one of the beloved animated series is headlining a live-action show. And although many fans will proselytize the cartoon's greatness, and although animation as a medium should not be inherently be considered lesser than live action, Ahsoka feels like a bigger deal. That's a lot of couching, which is to say that, yeah, people often look down on animation, not that they should, but and Clone Wars obviously great, but it does. I think they're right here saying that this does feel like a bigger deal.
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was really interesting. I was like, "Oh, cool! It's a crawl, but it's different. It's not.
It's different.
The
exactly.
same crawl, but which I thought was an interesting choice. But I get it. Yeah, I get it that they can't do the main Star Wars crawl because that's for the movies. I don't know.
Sure. I don't know. I don't. It doesn't seem like there's a rule, but
yeah. But then it's like, can you have the crawl without the Star Wars theme? You know, like
well, they do here.
Yeah. No, they don't. It doesn't have the fanfare like
That's
the
what
Star
I mean.
Wars
It doesn't have
fanfare.
exactly, but they do the crawl and it doesn't have the fanfare. So
yes, yeah.
But it's also in red and not yellow.
But
so
it doesn't do the. It doesn't.
It doesn't.
It doesn't
disappear
crawl
in the
into
distance.
space. Yes, yeah. So it's not quite the same. But I clocked it and I immediately liked it. I just felt that this whole opening scene, the crawl, and then the next opening scene just felt very like old school Star Wars to me.
Oh, totally.
In like
100%.
the best way. Yeah.
It sets the mood. So here's the final paragraph of this article. By opening with the crawl, Ahsoka is positioning itself on the same level of significance as one of the Skywalker saga movies. Viewers might not have caught all of Rebels, but its core cast is now the focus of this important series. A series that may in turn become a movie, as one of the films supposedly on the horizon is a Filoni-directed one that's directly connected to The Mandalorian, Boba Fett, and Ahsoka. The crawl, by virtue of what it is, does offer casual viewers the basic information in order to enjoy Ahsoka, but it's also a means of meeting them halfway, because the characters and the lore from the cartoons, is what maintains what mainstream Star Wars is going to be from now on. The writing is on the wall, so it's only natural that it would be on the stars too. So there you go. That's written by James Gresby, an editor at Vulture, who writes about genre TV and movies. And you can find that at vulture.com if you want to read the whole thing, and I would recommend it. I think sums up my feeling. It sets the tone and it nails it. I think it's really cool. So let's read the opening crawl, shall we? The evil Galactic Empire, which, by the way, it uses some of these kind of classic motifs from the original opening crawl by not only capitalizing some of these, but like adding some of these kind of like additional modifiers to the word. So the evil Galactic Empire has fallen, and a new republic has risen to take its place. However, sinister agents are already at work to undermine the fragile peace. A plot is underway to find the lost Imperial Grand Admiral Thrawn and bring him out of exile. Once presumed dead, rumors are spreading of Thrawn's return, which would galvanize the Imperial remnants and start another war. Former Jedi Knight Ahsoka Tano captured one of Thrawn's allies and learned of a secret map, which is vital to the enemy's plan. Ahsoka now searches for the map as her prisoner, Morgan Elsbeth, is transported to the New Republic for trial. So, very, very cool. A couple things that come to mind with this opening crawl, which is this stuff all seems very important information to know about how, like, the Empire's fallen. Of course, we knew that. New Republic has risen. Sinister agents are already at work to undermine the fragile peace. They touch on this in the last season of Mando, but people largely consider that episode to be the worst episode of the season. So, take that for what it's worth. They talk about how they're these Imperial remnants that can be galvanized by the return of Grand Admiral Thrawn. None of that stuff is even touched on at all in the sequel movies, which I think is a shame. And really, what this makes me feel like is they, for obvious reasons, rushed into those sequel movies. They weren't well planned. And because of that, we're now filling the gaps again with arguably much more interesting storytelling happening here on the small screen, right? We're dealing with the fallouts of Return of the Jedi. What does it mean to run a new Republic? It's kind of has this flipped script where you have the Imperial agents are kind of the rebels now, and the New Republic is has to control the galaxy, so they have this kind of Imperial nature to them where they have big ships and resources, etc. But they're the good guys, so it's kind of this like flipped thing, which I think is interesting and would have made for a really cool setting for the sequels. But instead, what we get in the sequels is that's all thrown away almost immediately in the first movie.
It's just gone already. It's like, well, we did have this, but it's fucked now, so too bad.
Exactly. And like, so it does bum me out a little bit. So it's like, all this is leading to some really cool movie where we're going to see Thrawn and we're going to have big space battles, and that's going to be awesome. And then it's all going to be for naught, because that's all going to lead into the First Order and the Rise of Skywalker, which we all agree is the worst movie maybe ever made. So, that's it's just kind of like, it has a little bit of it's a little tainted to me in a sense that, like, this is so cool. Imagine if this is one of the first things that we got after, like, we're coming back. Star Wars is coming back. We're gonna pick up after the original trilogy. What's happening? Oh my God, there's sinister agents. Oh, there's the Grand Admiral Thrawn. How cool is that? That kind of stuff. That feeling, I feel like, is lost, unfortunately. So, what do you feel about the opening crawl?
I just, like I said, I kind of liked it for a nostalgia kind of reasons, and then it just felt like I was immediately back into OG Star Wars, so it kind of just got me hooked right away. I don't know. I'm a sucker for a good crawl.
Yeah, it just really sets the tone, right? Like, you're like, exactly what to expect, and then you can just jump right into action without having to do too much explaining.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to have that crawl, honestly, because then you don't need to be told this by a character 2 seconds later.
Like,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, you don't.
What do they call that again? Sorry, I always
exposition.
Exposition. Yes. So it's nice where you can just be like, here's all the exposition you need to just jump you into the exciting
exactly.
bits.
Let's accelerate into this, which it feels like you're launched right out of a gun into this series, which is great. So we start in space, which I love. We start in space, and we're introduced to a new class of Republic transport. Very cool looking. They are approached by an unknown ship. It's got a kind of Lambda class tri-wing style design that is, I think, always very cool looking in classic Star Wars.
Yeah.
This mystery ship, and we are on the bridge of this New Republic transport, and this mystery ship transmits what appears to be old Jedi clearance codes. Right? It's an old code, sir, but it checks out. And this is kind of an example of how the New Republic's arrogance kind of is their own downfall, right?
Yeah.
He says, let's call their bluff, invite them aboard. Why would you invite them aboard? That seems like a bad idea.
Yeah. If you're like, I don't think they're Jedi. I think they're just trying to
just shoot them out of the air. Then.
Yeah, exactly. Why let them come on board your ship? But
right.
I know.
So he lets them board their ship. This captain, who's Captain Hale, by the way, greets the visitors personally upon their arrival, and we are introduced to 2 hooded characters. These are, of course, Skull and Hati, Baylan Skull and Shin Hati. Do you know the background of Skull and Hati as a naming convention?
No, I do not.
So they are from Norse mythology. Skull and Hati are both wolves, of course, because they are. What isn't a wolf theme when it comes to Dave Filoni stuff?
Isn't Skull like drink? Isn't that just like Cheers? When you say skull,
Maybe,
and
I don't
he
know.
cheers.
In what language?
I thought
In like with like Vikings and stuff.
German. Maybe I'm thinking German.
Okay, I don't know, but I will say this. Um, it's a little on the nose, but
Yeah.
the whole North mythology thing is that they are wolves that chase the sun and the moon, right? So they chase the
Oh.
sun down as it sets and the moon down as it sets, etc.
Hmm.
And they are the children of the giant wolf Fenrir that everyone's familiar with. And that at Ragnarok, Skull and Hati consume the sun and the moon, and that's the sign that Ragnarok has begun. So, if you've played God of War recently, God of War 2, you might be familiar with these. But obviously, they go by their first names primarily here, Balin and Shin.
Yeah.
So
Sorry, there's just another little part here for the Norse. I'm looking it up now, but for the Norse mythology, that Skull is the one who mocks, and Hati is the one who hates. That's kind of cool.
Okay.
Interesting.
Well, she does have Hati Shin has kind of a more of an angry presence to her.
Yeah.
In the show for sure. Anyway, so we're introduced to them. They are trying to pass as Jedi. I love the oh, it's a surprise to see Jedi out here. It's like, well, we're kind of a mystery to everybody. Thanks for asking. Bye. And it doesn't really work. He says that he wants to see their identification. And they this is also pretty cool. There's a lot of cool moments here, which is like, well, let me show you let me show you our identification, and then they just light their lightsabers up, and that's pretty cool. And we get the line, of course, which is always great. We are no Jedi.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I am no Jedi. We are no Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
It's always full of it's a weighty phrase to say, right? Because I guess if I'm kind of unpacking it, which is to say, you have expectations for what a Jedi is, a guardian of peace,
right.
And all that kind of thing. And then, if you have the same abilities of a Jedi, but you're not a Jedi, all bets are off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're kind of screwed. So we get this really cool infiltration action sequence that basically opens this whole episode. The two quote unquote Jedi storm the ship. What do you want to call them? Mercenaries? What's a good short phrase for them? I feel like that's not the right word.
They are kind of mercenaries, I guess, but I don't know. I don't know what else you would call them.
Sellswords.
Yes, I was going to say sellswords, but it's literally mercenaries. Like they're not. Can you call them?
Yeah, but they
Sith?
have swords. Yeah, and they're not. They're not Sith. They have orange lightsabers or slightly off red.
Right.
So,
which in itself, I'm not 100% sure about that choice, but I know it was purposeful. But I don't know how I feel about it yet.
You prefer just if it was just red straight up?
Yeah, because I'm like, okay, well, like, did you bleed the crystals? Did you not bleed
just
the
not
crystals?
As much.
Like, I'm just kind of like,
it's bleeding. It's bleeding-ish.
Or is it just orange? Like, I don't know.
It's unclear. But there's also a red one. We also see a red one in episode 2. So that there's all types are covered here.
Yeah. See, because at first I wasn't too sure if they were purposefully trying to make them orange or if the red was just supposed to be like an orangey red. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't know if they'll ever explain it. It's kind of fun when they don't, to be honest. Like,
that's true. Yeah, but
maybe that's just what the color that Ray Stevenson wanted his lightsaber to be. I don't know.
Like Mace Windu, yeah.
Yeah, like Mace Windu.
Yeah.
But largely speaking, it's cool that I'm always a fan of introducing a new color. I love the Ray yellow lightsaber, by the way, at the end of.
Oh, okay.
In the worst movie ever made, we do get a yellow, cool lightsaber and a pretty cool.
Because you can in Fallen Order, you can make like any color.
Yes, basically
lightsaber
pink, whatever color.
Purple, yeah, like taupe.
Like orange is in there too. Yeah. It's not this orange; it's a lighter orange. And by the way, I actually like the orange color that you get, the lighter orange color that you can use in the Fallen Order games. But again, here maybe we'll see. They've never explicitly explained Ahsoka's white lightsabers in any of the on-screen media, right?
True.
But at the same time, we do have a character very well positioned to help explain lightsaber stuff when we'll get to that. Yeah,
that's true.
So we get this really cool infiltration scene. I really love it. Another hallway action fight sequence. Love the shot of those guys getting like flown down the hallway. That's really cool. very reminiscent, and I think maybe intentionally so, of the opening sequence from A New Hope when Vader infiltrates the Tantive
Yes.
4,
Yeah.
right? And you get these really white hallways with a very dark presence, and it creates this really cool visual contrast. And you get that here as well with Baylan. Less much with Shin, but she's also there. Because his shoulders are so, they have this like, they're so wide,
Yeah.
right? It
Yeah.
really creates this really cool visual look. I don't know if he's got like shoulder pads on or something
He might just
going
be
on,
broad-shouldered.
or just have broad shoulders. And of course, we should mention, Ray Stevenson, who plays Baylan. He passed away recently.
Yeah.
And the first episode is dedicated to him. I really like this character. I really, and there's a bit of, that kind of like, Heath Ledger Joker scenario where like, oh, once the actor's died, it adds a little bit of gravitas, I guess, to the character. But
Right.
it'd be interesting to see how they, how this character wraps up in the end of the season. Because again, just really great performances so far. A shame.
Yeah. You know what he weirdly gave me vibes of, and I mean this in all the best ways, is like he gives me Sean Connery vibes.
Sure, yeah.
But like Sean
It's the
Connery
beard.
specifically in what's that one? When he escapes from Alcatraz. The Rock, yes.
Great
Like,
movie. Well, he's
just that
basically playing
kinda-
James Bond in that movie still, so
Yeah, like it's kind of that James Bond, Sean Connery. Yeah, he gives me that kind of vibe in this show a little
yeah,
bit.
he has
but-
a little less charisma, I would say, but
yeah, not the
Which
full
intentionally so. Yeah.
Sean Connery, but yeah, I don't know what it was. I was like, he's giving me. I just feel like Sean Connery could also play this character.
Right, sure, yeah, probably. He also passed away, unfortunately.
Yes, yeah.
So, they rescue Morgan Elsbeth again. Shades of the original trilogy here. Rescuing Leia from the Death Star. Similar kind of visual language with this kind of downward angle into the cell and all that kind of stuff. So I think that makes sense. This is where we learn that his name is Baylan, and we also learn as they're kind of walking out of the down this white hallway, which again similar to the Tantive 4. She's worried about Ahsoka, who knows where the map is, and that's kind of where we cut to the opening title sequence. So I watched the Screen Crush recap, as I always do, because I want to catch some of the other little things I might have missed. But they mentioned that they kind of messed up this opening sequence because they had a really great opportunity to be like, because right at the beginning, she's like, there's a Jedi, and he's like, who is this Jedi? And then she says the name, like Morgan Elsbeth says Ahsoka Tano, but they could have just cut to the title sequence when he said, who is this Jedi?
Oh,
cut to the title sequence because the show is called Ahsoka.
That's
so
true.
That was kind of a missed opportunity. But again, kind of that deliberate pacing that kind of leads to that. Any other thoughts on this opening kind of heist sequence?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I specifically, and I know it's really small, I just like that you get the overhead of the ship coming in as like the first shot.
Oh yeah, yes.
To me, it's just classic Star Wars. It's just
so good. Again, allusions to the original trilogy.
Yeah, it's just great. I just feel like, I don't know. It, like I said, it got me so excited just right away. So
yeah, you hear the hum of the engine.
Yeah,
and then you especially if you get a nice a nice audio system, you can kind of hear the throaty bass as it kind of rolls in. Yeah, that's the stuff.
But these characters are cool, and yeah, they did a very good job of like commanding the scenes and getting their
they
overall
have a presence.
Yeah, their presence is very cool.
Yes, it is very cool. I haven't nailed down exactly how I would define them yet, but we'll get to more of that once we get more of them. Okay, so we cut to what is a mystery planet we learn later is named Arcana. But a mystery planet for now. Ahsoka emerges from the dust, very Yojimbo style, as she approaches the ruins of some type of ancient temple / monument. She, with her lightsabers, cuts her way into the temple. Very cool. This is in the trailer where she slices a little circle around herself. On the walls inside this temple, and this is there's no dialogue. It's very, again, almost Indiana Jones-esque in its kind of puzzle solving idea here. We get these three figures on the wall. They have these kind of this alien-esque look to them. Ahsoka, quote unquote, listens to some of these pillars that are in the room, to start unraveling the puzzle to unlock, whatever she's after. She's bouncing light onto these figures on the wall. Again, very Indiana Jones style. And then I guess it's like while we're doing this, I just have to admit, I love the black dust that's on everything, and I especially love that pillar of dust that she gets the map out of. I think it's just a very cool look. Like graphite or something that they're using there. It's really dope. So she adjusts everything. A new pillar emerges, and then on top of that, we discover that there is this bronze sphere, golden bronzy sphere that we don't know what this is yet, but it's like ancient tech. It looks really cool. So she emerges from the temple to find an HK droid waiting for her, and we get this kind of really cool moment where she, points her lightsaber and says, "Come no closer," which, badass stuff right there. And we see that, in fact, there are 5 droids, 5 HK droids, and they're all equipped with, I can't remember what they're called, Magna staffs or something like that.
Yeah, because those droids are called like Magna guards. At some point, when they have those like electro staffs or vibro staffs. I don't know.
I don't feel like they're vibro because they've got that like electrical thing going on. I don't know. Yeah. If anyone knows, you'd let us know. But they are similar to the staffs that those Magna guards carry.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So she takes them out pretty quickly. There's some really cool moments where she like has one kind of walk through a lightsaber on its own and like cut itself in half, which is really cool. Maybe we're spoiled when it comes to lightsaber action. There's a lot of it in this episode and even the next one. But I don't know. I feel like I would like there to be more awe when it comes to lightsabers. Something's not quite there. I don't know what it is yet. Maybe we just need these to have like the right stakes or something to make it happen. What I'm imagining is the feel of kind of that lightsaber battle from Episode 1, obviously Duel of the Fates, has the way that the lightsabers hit each other has this weight to it that I feel like is missing from this episode. So
yeah, it's hard to. I feel like, especially in live action with Ahsoka, because in animation Ahsoka is so like acrobatic.
Oh yeah, she's like jumping and flipping all over stuff.
Yeah, and that's really, really hard to do live action. So I'm not gonna shit on Rosario Dawson for not being able to like backflip and whatever. Do that kind of stuff for the Ahsoka character, but it is something that kind of gets missed a little bit.
I would argue there's too much flipping and stuff in the Clone Wars. Some point it gets like silly, like enough. They're like flipping off walls and stuff constantly. Anyway, whatever. Not to get caught up in the nitty gritty, but I agree. It would be cool to see a little bit more Force action.
Yes, yeah.
Where's that Force speed that we saw
the one
time? Yeah, where's that? I want that. Okay, so she takes care of the droids. There's some cool stuff where she like cuts holes underneath them and like makes them fall and all that kind of stuff. Really fun action sequence. Really can't. It doesn't feel like it's very weighty or like where's the first action sequence basically with Ahsoka in this series. So it's not like anything really is going to happen here. So you're not really that worried about droids. And I gotta be honest, having Jedi fight droids is still the peak of lightsaber combat because they can cut them in pieces.
Well, yeah.
Which you can't do, which they just are very reluctant to do with like unless we're cutting off a specific hand or limb or something. It's just rare that we're gonna get the true brutality of what a real lightsaber could do to a human body. It's just not gonna happen in Star Wars in most versions of Star Wars. You might get
live action, you mean?
You might get that into live action especially, but you might get that in Rebel Moon.
I was like, we have seen Ahsoka behead, what was it, 4 Mandalorians?
Decapitations happen, 100%. They're much easier to do. Like, if you were, like, chopping bodies, parts left and right, I think it would be a bit... Like, imagine you, like, chopped off 2 arms or something. Obviously, we get people cut in half. Maul is a great example and stuff like that.
Well, it'd just be Kill Bill.
Yeah, or I'm imagining, like, the scene from... Monty Python's The Holy Grail.
Oh,
where you got the knight with the missing arms.
It's just a flesh wound.
Yeah, exactly. That guy. Exactly. Yeah. And I got to be honest, we'll get to this at the end of the episode. The stabbing to the chest has become much less fatal since episode 1.
I know.
That's
to the gut.
Interesting. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So she takes care of the droids, and they initiate a self-destruct protocol. So she starts running Hu Yang, which is a. Should we do this now? Well, let me just finish this recap, and we'll get into the Hu Yang stuff. Hu Yang brings the ship in to rescue her as the droids explode. The explosion here is
Huge.
massive, like much bigger than you'd expect, I feel like, given what we saw.
Not expecting it to be that huge. I was like, whoa, they mean like business explode. Like,
right. Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to level your whole city.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I was shocked by how big of an explosion
she seemed to know because she took off running as soon as she heard. Also, very funny that they announced to you that they're going to explode.
Well, I think I feel like it was announcing to the other ones.
Yeah, that's fair.
But maybe they could just do that wirelessly. I don't know.
Well, that's kind of a thing in Mando too, though, because remember when we first meet IG-11 and he's like initiating self-destruct, and Mando has to keep telling him not to.
yes, which was fun. I miss IG-11. Anyway, okay. Where were we? So who's Hu Yang? So Hu Yang. Do you want to do the cursory background on Hu Yang?
You go ahead.
Okay. So Hu Yang, I'll pull up the Wikipedia while we're talking about it here. But
he's very cool, though.
Hu Yang is a, quote, Mark IV architect droid professor based aboard the Jedi vessel Crucible, who, for 1,000 generations, taught Jedi younglings, including Grandmaster Yoda and Jedi Master Mace Windu, how to construct their lightsabers following The Gathering. Now, The Gathering is a great arc in the Clone Wars where Ahsoka escorts a bunch of younglings so they can get their first kyber crystals. I recommend watching that arc as well. Hu Yang notably is played by all-time great David Tennant here, and was the voice of the character in the Clone Wars as well. So they brought in David Tennant to return to the role, and I think they realized, we have David Tennant here? We should give him more lines. So he's a pretty big part of the series so far in the first 2 episodes, and I am not complaining. I love their line readings. I think they totally nail it. It's nice to have a droid who's from the, to be honest, even before the High Republic era, like predates even that, who has all this knowledge and kind of has that kind of not Yoda-esque type of teachings, but can able to tap into that kind of same feel of having this kind of learned person. They refer to him as a professor here. So there you go.
He's very I think it's just such a cool. It's just such a neat thing that they made this this character or droid in general. I just think it's so cool. It's kind of like he's not, obviously it's not the same, but in Harry Potter where there's like Ollivander and he's like the wand guy.
Yes.
And everybody goes to him to get their wands and whatever. But it's like very cool that Star Wars has a version of it.
It is the same thing.
But he's not like a human. It's neat that they gave all of this to a droid, because they could have very easily just given this whole story and role to like another alien species. But it's neat to see a droid with this kind of knowledge and this kind of importance in the Jedi's world, right?
This is kind of where I think there's a tricky balance between how much like characters do you pull from canon into these type of stories without it feeling like you need to go back and watch all these episodes to know who these people are, right? There's a little bit of both in this series, but I think Hu Yang is a really great example of a character that you immediately understand what they are. They're a companion to Ahsoka. There's a couple things that we get in lines of dialogue right at the beginning here about how he's just following Jedi protocols.
Protocols,
right? And we kind of learn that background right away. And you want to go back. There's one episode. He's featured prominently in one episode of the Clone Wars. But the character itself is so interesting that including him here is such a smart move, in my opinion, from Dave Filoni. So this is, I think, an example of where it really works, where you don't need to know that background, but having this character here brings this gravitas because, again, not only because he's played by David Tennant, but because he's been around for centuries, right?
Yeah,
so has that knowledge, and that's interesting, right? Especially when you're dealing with ancient stuff.
I think and you never know. He could just be a low-key also favorite of Dave Filoni's as well, of him being like, man, I really like this character. Like, I just want to bring it back into, to have more people know about him and know about his story and stuff, because it is so cool about the amount of stories and knowledge that this character can potentially carry with them.
Well, yeah,
He's
and
got an
also
archive of all lightsabers that he's ever
right,
seen help
thousands of
construct.
them.
Yeah,
Right,
which is
exactly.
really, really cool.
Yeah, and not I mean above all that, it's like, first of all, if you really like the character, you would have probably brought him back another time or sooner. But I don't know. I think it's great. And also, yeah, I was gonna mention this. Doesn't have a number code identifier. It has a name.
Yeah.
Not a lot of droids with names.
That's
Chopper
true.
has a name.
Yeah,
So
but
that's
Chopper's name is because of his code.
well, that's fair, right? And maybe Hu Yang is relevant in some way to his code, but it's not obvious to me in any way. Maybe it's a number in another language or something. But
Yeah.
it has all these trappings to create a really interesting character. Really great performance from David Tennant. So again, we're lucky to have him here. It's just a really fun idea to bring him into it. Okay, so Hu Yang brings in the ship. They rescue Ahsoka, and she's kind of annoyed with him. Hu Yang says that, listen, I would be closer, but Jedi protocols have me need to stay far. Normally, you would have the backup of a Jedi, a Padawan,
Yeah.
right? Which is like a fun little like prodding. A Padawan learner, as of course they call them. And she mentions, of course, this is funny. Like, oh, how'd you find it? Right? She gets the map, and how'd you find it? And he's like, well, let's just say I didn't follow standard Jedi protocol. So I guess we have to assume that she tortured Morgan Elsbeth for this information.
I wouldn't say tortured.
Or
She
extracted
probably just,
it from her brain somehow.
yeah, used her Jedi
Yeah,
mind.
they're not supposed to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not supposed to, but they can and they will. And
I
they
feel
do.
like it probably hurts though, having
Yeah.
information extracted from your brain.
Probably.
So, yeah. Like think about like when Rey is like being held up by Snoke, and she's like he's like searching through her brain. She doesn't look like she's very comfortable.
No, of course not.
Yeah. Okay, so they're interrupted by a message from Home One about a Priority One message. There's been an incident. So we also learn that she's still going by the Fulcrum call sign, which is really cool, which we learn in Rebels. I also would like to know how Hu Yang survives the purge, but I guess we'll find out that.
Well, and I'm just curious how they like linked up him and Ahsoka. I'm like, where did you find him?
There's a fun, interesting story there.
Cool, yeah.
Exactly. By the way, Home One, which we'll get to see in a moment, Home One is the ship that they plan the Death Star run on. So that is the same ship, to be clear, and was manned by Admiral Akbar.
Yeah, I was gonna say Admiral Akbar's ship.
Yeah,
it's a trap.
So we get a bunch of Mon Calamari in this episode, so that's nice. So we get some starship porn. We get some big, wide, sweeping shots of this of the transport that we saw. It was attacked. Home One is there now, kind of helping them recover, etc. And we see as they're landing that if you look carefully, you can see that the Ghost is in the docking bay. All that kind of stuff. It's really cool. Love getting to see the ships up close. I know some people got to see these episodes in theaters, and man,
oh, what?
I just really wish. Again, I'm gonna keep repeating this. Yeah, if you went to the official premiere of the show, you would have saw it in theaters. That's mostly just either people who worked on it and or journalists and stuff. But that is to say, missing opportunities. You want to get people back in theaters. I will go to a theater for 53 minutes to watch an episode of Star Wars Ahsoka.
Yeah,
and
true.
I'll pay good money to do that. But
I wouldn't pay good money. I'd pay.
How much would you pay?
Reasonable money.
Like you wouldn't pay full movie ticket price, obviously.
No.
Right?
No. I would pay.
What if you could buy like a season pass, and then you could see the whole season, and you show up like weekly?
That is too much commitment.
I would
for the way my life is now. Yeah.
Listen, if I owned a theater chain, it'd be something I consider. I don't know, how open Disney would be to that, but I feel like it's more revenue. Like, why not? I don't know.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay, so as they land in the and by the way, Ahsoka's ship is the same ship. It's the same ship from that Gathering episode, right? Of Ahsoka. So maybe he was on that ship the whole time.
Maybe, yeah.
Let's just double check. Hold on. He's stationed on. It says in his Wikipedia, He is stationed on the blah 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 blah, the Crucible, vessel. Oh no, it's a different ship. It looks like a different ship to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, very different ship. My bad. But anyway, this is the same ship that we see Ahsoka arrive on Lothal in the Rebels series finale, which we'll get to more of that at the end of this episode and the next. So we're back on Home 1. Lots of extras, people getting patched up in the docking bay. Really cool. Not perfect in terms of visual execution here. Definitely was on the volume. Feels like it's on the volume, but it's fine. But we get right to business as we're introduced to Hera, and her theme plays as she arrives, which is I think always helpful to attach those themes to those people, especially when you have the opportunity. And we get right down to business about these mystery Jedi that attacked the ship. So Huyan thinks that they were maybe Jedi at one point. Ahsoka's not sure who they are, but asks Huyang to run a match on their lightsabers, which is a very like cop thing to do. Run a match on their lightsabers. It's like their fingerprints, which is kind of cool. Everyone has a unique lightsaber, which is also handy when you're trying to identify people. I will say we should quickly mention who is Hera, again, without getting into too much details. Hera is a Twi'lek who, rebel pilot, eventually becomes a general in the New Republic. She gets a call out in Rogue One. Her name is mentioned in Rogue One, General Syndulla. She also has a kid, although her son has not made an appearance yet in the show.
Yeah, I was like, are we going to see Jason Syndulla?
People suspect that we will, but who knows? How old would he be at this point?
8 or 9.
Okay, maybe,
right?
I feel like he's got to be like 12 or something right now, but I'm not sure.
I don't know. I would have to know when exactly Ahsoka, like when does this actually take place in terms of...
Yeah, it's how much further... we don't know a lot of things. We don't know exactly when the scene at the end of Rebels takes place. So there's there's a lot of things there.
Yeah, that's mysteries.
True. So she tells Ahsoka tells Hera about the map to Thrawn, who at first doesn't believe her, saying that's not possible. That Thrawn died at the Battle of Lothal, which of course references the finale of Rebels. By the way, in case you're curious why she might think that, Thrawn and Ezra get launched into space by a bunch of space whales named the Purrgil, which we see a reference to in Mando season 3.
Yeah, the Purrgils.
And actually, we see them again in this series as well. We will see more of them, but specifically, we see the like a shout out to them here. So they get
launched into space by space whales.
They got launched into space by hyperspace. I
was going to say you have to say that the whales can travel through hyperspace.
Yes.
So they had no idea where they were going, and their ship was hella fucked up because the Purrgils were had their tentacles, because they're whales, but they have tentacles.
They have whales
through the ship, so the ship was very compromised.
Yeah,
the ship went too.
It's not clear. I don't know how that works entirely. How you survive in that environment.
Magic space whale.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe they create some sort of bubble of some kind. Yeah, exactly.
I guess we'll find out.
Warp shell. Anyway, we will find out, because we know Thrawn's alive, and if Thrawn's alive, Ezra's probably alive. But everyone assumed that they're dead. So when she finds out this, Hera, the surrogate mother of Ezra, gets hopeful that if Thrawn is alive, then perhaps Ezra is as well. So that's kind of one of the driving factors here.
Yes.
Probably not as easy to kind of hold you if you're not a Rebels watcher, but it is something that they're trying to hit on here pretty early. Okay.
Question.
Yes, go ahead.
Will you be mad if, and I'm not, they probably wouldn't do this because I think it would make too many people mad, but would you be mad if the reason Thrawn and Ezra survived, it was the same reason why Ahsoka survives? It was a world between worlds thing.
They got pulled. Well,
they pulled out.
They already mention a whole thing about time and space in the second episode. So No, I mean that's already pre-established as a thing. But who would have done that?
Well, that's what I mean. Is it
yeah.
too easy? Is that too easy
Well, I mean,
of a
it
of a
already is too
save?
easy. You know, it like you know what I mean. Like Ahsoka's surviving Vader in that scene.
Yeah.
And by the way, again, speaking about things that we hope you know, it's another example of an episode that's probably worth watching if you don't only want to watch a few of them, where Ahsoka faces off against Vader, right? Master versus apprentice. And then of course they rip that off for Obi-Wan. It's basically the exact same thing. Like down, like almost like one for one the same. But I would say, you know, that would have been a really cool end for Ahsoka at the dying at the hands of Vader. We would have all been, you know, broken up about it, but we would have all gotten over it eventually. They pull her out of time and space in this World Between Worlds thing, and it is interesting how they do that. And
pretty
by
cool.
the way, there's this really cool sequence with the Emperor in that. And by the way, Emperor comes back in the series finale. I forgot about this. Really cool presence. I mean, obviously voiced by Ian McDermott in the series finale of Rebels. Really puts on this cool show for Ezra, trying to tempt him. This really interesting thing. So, long story short is no, it wouldn't bug me, but they have to explain it right. You can't just be like, well, they just did it again, because it's hard to get there into the World Between Worlds, and someone would have to like actively engage with them from that realm.
Yes,
I don't know. There's a whole bunch of things they'd have to explain. It's probably not going to be what happens, is my assumption. People think that Ezra is the mystery Inquisitor.
Yeah, that's dumb.
And that doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't make any sense. Why would he come back? Why would why would he come back
it
evil?
Doesn't make sense.
And if he did, why would he just start fighting Ahsoka? That makes no sense.
Exactly. And if he came back, how did Thrawn not come back? So it doesn't. Exactly. They're still over there in the other galaxy or whatever. So.
No, that's dumb. Yeah, I saw that too, and I was like, "That's no."
Yeah, I'm not sure which YouTube channel was promoting that, but
probably that one who's stupid. What's his name?
The one Star Wars Explained.
Yeah, him.
Yeah, he sucks.
They always have wild theories that make
just because
sense.
he wants the clicks.
Yeah, it's so dumb.
Clicks.
They're always wrong.
Yes. Yeah, basically. Okay, so they need to unlock the map. That's the goal right now. A Mon Cala officer wants Hera to give the Defense Council, we don't know much about the Defense Council of the New Republic, but interesting that they get a shout out here, an update on the incident, quote unquote, that where Morgan Elsbeth was extracted from New Republic custody. Really hard to keep track of their prisoners, the New Republic. Not great at holding on to their prisoners in general, it seems like.
Yeah.
Between Moff Gideon, that one guy from Mando Season 1, and now this, it's like, you know, you guys got to figure out your prison system. It needs a better security, something. Anyway, before she leaves, Hera, she suggests to Ahsoka that there is someone who would be helpful with unlocking this map, despite Ahsoka being kind of less enthusiastic about it. So we cut to Lothal, a ceremony where it's it's a ceremony day. I don't know if this is like the opposite of Empire Day. It's the day that they celebrate because they kick the Empire out.
Liberation of the Fall, yeah.
Liberation Day, we'll call it, yeah. So it's a ceremony, and we're at Lothal the first time we see it in live action. Looks great.
It does look so good.
Really surprising how well they were able to translate that into live action, because it really was a pretty bare bones planet as far as planets are concerned from an animation standpoint. Not a lot going on, just big grassy plains as far as the eye can see, really. And one city with highways that are empty and lead to nowhere.
Yeah.
but you know, whatever. They're just waiting for that next colony to come up so they can have highways working back and forth. They're just working ahead of time, you know? Got to be prepared.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's being put on, this ceremony is being put on by Governor Ryder Azadi, who, if you are familiar with Rebels, is another character who appears in the final season of that. Played in live action by the voice actor who played them in animation,
I like that.
Clancy Brown. Clancy Brown, great actor. Probably recognize him from Shawshank Redemption. Okay, so love Clancy Brown. Always appreciate him. He's really great. Lex Luthor in animation also. He has a long history of animation voicing. Anyway, he's played here in live action. And the more characters that come from animation played by the same people in live action, the more you got to be like, man, that really sucks for the whole Ahsoka situation.
Oh, yeah.
And a
Well,
few others.
Yeah.
But it's just like it kind of irks them. It kind of feels like not really fair. Another example of that, by the way, because there's another kind of minor character here who is not played by the same person that voiced them in Rebels, but that's also
Right.
not necessarily
No, I don't think it's
to be suspected. Yeah. So we get another reference to Ezra because Ryder Azadi kind of mentions how he sacrificed his life to free the people of Lothal, and everyone cheers. And then, he introduces Sabine, who Sabine, by the way, of course, for those who may not be aware, is a Mandalorian. There's a long history there, but she kind of left her family, joined this rebel crew, and has a history of art. She's like a
yes.
She spray paints.
She's a graffiti artist. Yeah.
Graffiti. Yeah, she's a graffiti.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. That's much more nicer than saying that she just spray paints stuff. So they mentioned Ezra again. They tried to introduce Sabine, but she isn't there. Classic old and Sabine, and she's and womp womp. They even have like the mic go, which is really fun. Instead, because she's not there, he introduces Senator Jai Kell, played by a comedian that I'm familiar with, Vinnie Thomas.
Oh, okay.
He's on Twitter. It's very funny, in my opinion. And this is another character who appears in one episode of the animated series. Not a senator in the animated series, just like a kid at that time. But
he's in more than one episode.
Oh, really? He's in a couple episodes? Really? I don't really remember.
He's in another one when Ezra is infiltrating one of those cadets episodes.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
He's one of the cadets in that episode that Ezra gets to end up helping him out in the end, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So, long story short, they brought back this really deep cut character for this one small role.
When they said his name, I was like, wait. I'm like, I know that name. But yeah, he's a small character.
It. Yeah, that I found out by watching some of the recaps.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're like, "Hey, where's Sabine?" So cut to Lothal Highway System, and we catch up with Sabine on a speeder, listening to what amounts to Star Wars rock or like rock rap situation. It kind of sounds like it's in Japanese. It does. Japanese rock.
Yeah.
And I think they're talking about margaritas, which also seems fine to me. But anyway, I'm down for it. It's fun Star Wars music. And she's ripping down the highway listening to her fun music. And then we are introduced to what is exciting probably to people of the extended universe, but E-Wing fighters, which are what we see here in the scene. But we're introduced in one of the novels in the extended universe. Pretty cool design, so I'm cool to see them here. I don't have any attachment to them, but if you do from the extended universe, then more power to you. But again, I think it's a cool design. It fits well into the world. So again, one of those things. I know that there's a kind of a back and forth between they're ripping stuff off from the extended universe, or paying homage to the extended universe. I kind of see it more as the second one, which is they're really just kind of pulling in the stuff that works best, and canonizing it, and it's pretty cool. Cool here, little thing people might have missed, which is that there's these pilots are referenced as Spectre number whatever and Spectre number whatever else.
Yeah.
That's of course what the Rebel crew called themselves in Rebels. Spectre 1 through 5 and all that kind of stuff. So pretty cool that they're still keeping that up. Obviously, these pilots know her because she, lives on the planet as part of the security team of some kind. And so they're kind of chiding her for being you got to pull over. But she's not interested. So they try to land one of the E-Wings in front of her, but she does this really cool slide underneath the fighter. Really cool intro sequence for her. What do you think of her kind of intro here in this way?
I thought it was perfect. For Sabine, it just makes sense. Yeah, it's I don't know. It's very true to her character, I think. So I appreciated her whole vibe immediately.
Yeah, she's got a vibe. She has a rough edge, and obviously they really kind of hammer at that during these first two episodes.
Yes, definitely.
And Ahsoka obviously has a problem with that. But it's cool to see that come across here. I think she looks perfect. She has the exact right look. Again, easy to kind of extrapolate your imagination from extremely simple character design into something more complex and real, obviously in live action. But I think they nailed it. The hair is right, her armor's all right, her whole vibe, everything is perfect.
And like she's just so badass, and like it's just very typical Sabine. She would never go to a big ceremony like that to be honored, right? Like absolutely.
Well, yeah,
not.
especially when she feels like she failed because Ezra, quote unquote, died.
Yeah.
So she doesn't want to. She doesn't want to be there to kind of for everyone to be like, oh, look, she survived and Ezra didn't. That kind of thing. So we learn that she's living in Ezra's old house, which is really just an old comms tower outside of town.
Yeah.
A lonely old comms tower with a pet loth cat, which is fun.
So cool. I really liked that. This is one of the like tiny things that is stupid, but that I really liked. I think they did a really good job of a live action Lothcat. Like they made it look less stupid. Because like a live action Lothcat could look really dumb if you
it's
go
got,
off
like
the
bird
animation.
legs and like a flat face, and
because they have a huge mouth. But it was so cute. I want one. I was like, that thing's adorable. As soon as there's like plush toys, I want. Oh, they are ugly, but I really like things that are ugly that are cute. So
sure, fair enough. Okay, so you can help yourself to a plushie of one of those. And
I can't wait. But I want it to be like a furry one, so I'm hoping that they.
Right.
I have like a tiny Lothcat toy, and I obviously got it for my baby, but it makes noise, and I didn't realize that at first. And then I like pushed it, and it like growled and hissed at him, and I was like, "Oh no!" He did not think that was fun.
No, I don't. I bet not.
I was like, "I'm so sorry."
Well, obviously, again, there's like the shorthand for any characters. If you want to like them have a pet. So she feeds the cat. I really like how they do this, where the camera pans down below the table and you see her helmet perfectly positioned there, but she doesn't grab it. She grabs something else. She takes out an old chest, and inside she grabs an old holo projector. By the way, the same type that you see used in Episode 1 by Qui-Gon. And it's a message from Ezra. So again, they're really hammering home the Ezra thing. No, most people don't know who this person is, but we're now get to see them, at least in holographic form. Played by Amon Esfandi, if I'm saying that correct. And by the way, I got to admit, so they tried to like match his clothes from the season finale or the series finale of Rebels, and it's pretty close.
Yeah.
But his outfit in that series is also silly. Like it always looks stupid to me. So in this case, it still looks stupid in live action. But his hair also looks stupid. No offense. Again, this is not an indictment on Amon, but they always gave him this like very basic, just like imagine hair, but with no detail, and it's just flat on top of their head.
Yeah, it's like very like a helmet head.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they had to be like, all right, well, we got to, I guess, recreate that because this is what he looked like when he recorded this message. And so that's amusing to me. Obviously, most people wouldn't, if they haven't seen Rebels, would pick up on that. But the other thing I think is impressive is that Amon nails the mannerisms of Ezra, even in the short message. I feel like totally nails it. Feels like a fully fleshed out character. I felt like Ezra would have been difficult to bring to live action just because he's a little bit of a cartoon character, at times.
Right. Yeah.
And I say that disparagingly, not to say that cartoons are bad, but to say that he's just very larger than life in the way he emotes, big arm movements and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously this is just a holo message, but it's very reminiscent of the message that he leaves for the whole crew after he disappears with the whales with Thrawn, and that message is really nice. He kind of has something special to say to everyone, and now I guess we learn that he left a special additional message specifically for Sabine. And so one of the things that this kids show doesn't really hit on is this idea that Sabine and Ezra, there might have been some, romantic feelings closer to the end of the series.
Right.
It's funny because in this scene,
he
says that he always feels like he was a sister to her. So they kind of maybe poured cold water on that for a lot of people who were shipping that. But we'll see.
Because that's kind of when they first meet. Ezra's trying to impress her a little bit, and there's always kind of, but I mean, I don't know, maybe they're trying to say that over time it became not like that. You know what I mean? Like there wasn't that romantic connection. Because yeah, Hera and Kanan always called them the kids, right?
Yeah.
So it was almost like they were their own little family unit. So I don't know what's weirder, for him to refer to her as a sister or for there to be romantic interest, but yeah.
Well, I think it's worse when it's both.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It is kind
Yeah.
of creepy that it's both, but I thought it was
Well,
weird too.
again,
I clocked that too. I was like, sister. And I was
yeah,
like, okay,
I feel like that's
whatever.
like you because like this is message is new, and this is not something.
Yeah.
I was actually hoping he would have played the message, like that they recreate the message that he left for everybody, because
Yes,
that would have been
yes.
really interesting,
Yeah,
right?
but
But
I don't know.
they
He could have
recreate
just said
something
like
else later.
he could have just said family. Like you've always been like family to me, which would
Yeah, I mean, it would have. I mean, yeah, the sister thing specifically is weird.
is weird.
But again, like this is a message from like how long ago? 10 years ago? Not,
Yeah.
less than that. 6 years ago, I think. From when he was taken away, and so they've both grown up. So when they meet each other again, things might be different.
Yeah.
And besides, Luke kissed his sister, so that happened. That's canon.
Oh God.
You can't even deny it.
It's true.
I'm not pro incest, obviously, just to be clear here.
God,
but they're also not. They're also not clearly. They're not also not actually brothers.
They're not
and sisters.
related.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're not related. Yeah, just to be clear.
It's like step siblings at worst.
Yes, which there's a whole subcategory of porn about. So that's weird.
That's what I was getting at without having to say it.
Oh yeah, well I just wanted to be clear. I didn't want anyone to like not understand what we were getting at. All right, so that's that. Okay, so we get back to Ezra's house, old comms tower, etc., etc. Feeds the cat. Message from Ezra. So he leaves this personal message about how he, how he had to leave. He had to do what he had to do, and he hopes that she understands, and that he's counting on her. Which, by the way, I'm glad that they included that, because that was like the key piece of the Rebels message, which is like, and remember, I'm counting on you. He says that specifically to Sabine, and
yes.
she never really got what that meant, right? It's kind of implied that, oh well, maybe he meant that she needs to stay and take care of Lothal, his home, right? They say that explicitly at the end of Rebels. Of Sabine is narrating this, right?
Right.
Is Sabine that's narrating it at the end?
I think so. Yeah.
And it, and so she does that, but then she feels like she realizes, oh, actually, they want. I think he meant he wanted me. He was counting on me to go and get him, bring him back. Right?
Right.
Which I think is a hilarious misunderstanding. It's like, man, I was waiting for so long. It's like, well, I thought you wanted me to stay. So that, anyway, I think that's a fun thing. I hope we'll see how that works. I hope that Ezra's not like the very last scene of the season. Cause
yeah, I hope so too.
That would be a bummer. But they touch on this, like, I'm counting on you thing again. And so that I think that's interesting. Any other thoughts on that?
No, I don't think so.
Still.
Yeah.
Okay. Man, we got to move here. We got lots to cover. Okay, Arcana. So we're back on Arcana. Morgan Elsbeth and her Jedi guards are investigating the temple Ahsoka stole the map from. That was obviously blown up by that bomb. We learn that it is indeed an ancient temple built by the Night Sisters of Dathomir.
Very cool.
Very cool.
Yeah,
right?
And like neat that's her lineage. Like
right.
Immediately I was like, that's fucking cool, because we're getting a little bit of that in
it makes more sense how she held her own against Ahsoka in that fight in season 2.
But yeah, we're getting a little bit more of this kind of Night Sister stuff even in the Jedi Fallen Order stuff, right, too.
Yes.
We have Marin that comes back in there. So I like the Night Sister stuff. They're very cool characters. Again, if you haven't watched Clone Wars, you're not going to get it, but they're pretty badass. They're witches, and they're cool.
Yeah, they're just think of the Force as magic, and that's basically what they do.
Yeah, they wield it differently. It's very cool. So.
Yes, and we see that later in episode 2 of this series, where they have that green flame. Really interesting how they do that, and how they bring that into live action without making it feel silly. Because Lady Towson, who's like the leader of the Night Sisters in the Clone Wars, silly looking character. Would be hard to put that
she looks
really
like
hard to bring.
Creepy, like boogeyman, witch, ghost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Lots of weird stuff there. She also kind of like transmutes Maul's robot legs into different robot legs, so that's confusing. But we won't dwell on any of that. So they conclude that Ahsoka either has the map or it was vaporized. Obviously, we know that she has the map. And that Morgan Elsbeth has got this whole fate thing going on, which is kind of interesting. Which I think makes sense if you're gonna, she's a witch, so witches and fate, they're kind of intertwined, so that kind of makes sense. She said that fate has decided their next move, right? So Morgan has Balin send Shin to Lothal. Balin reveals that she's looking for Ahsoka's former apprentice Sabine. How Balin knows about Ahsoka and her former apprentice unknown at this time.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. We also, I didn't realize the first time I watched this, but that Mystery Inquisitor is also there with them, although he doesn't speak.
Yes,
So
yeah.
He's just hanging out there.
Just hanging.
Yep. Back at Lothal, Sabine is having a Force dream about Ezra. I assume it's a Force dream, or at least a dream. And wakes up to an indicator that Ahsoka is arriving. And then we get a recreation of the sequence of shots from the series finale of Rebels. There's actually quite a few of those now. Recreation of that final shot where Ahsoka's ship is being guided in by X-wings, and Ahsoka is looking on from the balcony of that tower. It's pretty cool. It's cool to see it reimagined here in live action, and I'm not mad at it. No. I have seen people online being like, "Oh, what a hack! Just redoing his stuff from animation." It's like I think he's giving homage to the work that his animation team did here. Let's not get crazy. There has been, I don't know if you've seen this, but there has been some like backlash against Dave Filoni as of late, and I don't know what's motivating that, but the fan base is
I just can't. Like, I see stuff. I feel like I can't even go on Twitter anymore because I get too enraged at like the dumb stuff that I see.
Now.
It's such a dumpster fire.
It's worse now.
Yeah, I'm seeing the tweets of people complaining that there's too many women characters.
Oh, that's funny. I was thinking this first episode is basically all women.
It's cool. I love it.
Women centric. That's cool.
It's awesome. But I mean,
I didn't even notice until at the
that's what Adam he didn't even notice when I told him. I was like, I just saw a guy getting like completely roasted by saying that he was confused and disappointed with the show and that there were too many women characters.
Oh,
and like everyone was just
because he doesn't understand how women can have the same job as men.
That
is pretty confusing.
Yeah. Everyone was like, "Oh yeah, it says confused in incel," and like just like
yeah. Well, I mean that's how you get people pissed off. But yeah, I mean,
but like if you're mad that I don't know, you can't be mad that there are too many women in the show when it's like they're central characters to Rebels and this is an extent, you know what I mean? Like
women have played key important roles of power in Star Wars since the very first
since
episode
always.
of Star Wars.
It's just kind of funny. But anyways, I'm just like fuck off. But I just ignore the negativity. I just kind of like to watch things as they are. I'm also seeing a little bit of it's not Andor. It's like, okay, these shows can be separate. Like they don't.
Nothing
have
is
to
Andor.
Be...
Andor is perfect. There's nothing else to say.
I just mean they don't need to be like pitted against each other. Like we don't need to be like this is shit because it's not that, right? Like,
yeah, that's true. It wasn't really it's comparing Andor to Mando season 3 was problematic in and of itself. This is much more favorably compared to the Mando series because it's more directly in line with that anyway.
Exactly,
okay, so where were we? Back on Lothal, Force Dream, a recreation of the Rebels sequence. Sabine meets up with Ahsoka and Hu Yang, who is greeted by Azadi, who is scolding her on arrival about missing the ceremony. I do like this line about Hu Yang about saying how he still has 75% original parts. I think that's fun. There is some coldness between Ahsoka and Sabine. How do you feel about this? How do you feel about this kind of character dynamic that was introduced obviously off screen, and now we're having to deal with the fallout of it now? But what's your sense of that?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because we're getting this whole bits and pieces storyline that there's more to their relationship that happened after Rebels, right? So, which in and of itself is really interesting to me because being like, okay, so Ahsoka was training Sabine. Like, how does that work? Is Sabine force sensitive?
It doesn't. Well, they talk about this a lot. It's like it doesn't seem. If she is, it's like
very
the most
minimal.
Basic ass force sensitivity you can get. And,
so it's like okay, so she's not, or was Ahsoka just trying to train her? Because like Kanan trains Sabine on how to wield the darksaber at one point.
Yes.
In Rebels, so there, she obviously had a little bit of aptitude for that. So it's, I don't know. Yeah, but yeah, there definitely is some coldness, and I'm sure we're gonna get this story, right? So we
Well,
get,
we'll hear about it. We
yeah,
probably won't. I mean, maybe we'll see it in a
no,
comic
no,
or
no, but I mean,
something.
like, we
But
get bits and pieces of it. It just seems like throughout these 2 episodes of Ahsoka, the gist that I'm getting from it is she was training Sabine, and then Ahsoka decided not to train her anymore for whatever
yes,
reason, but we
yeah.
don't know what that reason is yet. So
Well, in this episode, she said, "I'm sure you had your reasons." That's what Hera says
yes,
to her, which is I always. By the way, I find that such like a even Ahsoka admits it's like that's a bit of a scapegoat. You know, it's like it's not really. It doesn't really mean anything to say that. So
right,
you know, it feels like an out if you give that to somebody to say, "Well, I'm sure you had your reasons." Everyone has their reasons to do everything. That doesn't mean it's good, right?
right.
It's like this is like a personal like pet peeve of mine, but like it's like, oh, live your truth. It's like no. Yeah, if your truth is a
That's
bunch, it's like a bunch of
yeah.
racism and bullshit. Then
No.
no, don't live that truth. That
If,
truth sucks.
well, if your
You
truth
know
isn't true, then don't do
exactly.
that.
Yeah.
But
So that always it's been irksome to me. So that's kind of similar to that. But yeah, I am curious to learn more about this background. How does one train as a Jedi without being force sensitive, or at least having very minimal force sensitivity? Why would she have even started training as a Padawan to begin with?
yeah,
What was the inciting incident for that? Yeah, lots of stuff. I don't know. There's lots to pick up, and we'll find out, I'm sure, as the series goes on. But it is you know what? I'm not mad at it because I think it is an interesting dynamic to introduce. Because if everyone's buddy all the time, where's the conflict? So you need a little bit of conflict. This is kind of like low stakes conflict, and it helps. So.
Yeah.
Well, relatively low stakes because it does lead to some crappy stuff. But anyway, we'll get to that. Azadi basically urges her to like, listen, you should hear her out. You're gonna want to hear what she says, because she's obviously reluctant to speak with Ahsoka. The first thing that comes out of Ahsoka's mouth is, "I think I know how to find Ezra." This obviously is works to get her engaged. Aboard Ahsoka's ship, which is also a reference to the Clone Wars episode again, as I mentioned. Sabine. Sorry, the Rebels episode. We see Sabine take a look at her old bunk. So we get to see like, oh yeah, so she lived on the ship with her for a while. It's got her doodles on it. Interesting. She's kind of reminiscing here. And then they get right down to business, right? They talk about how they need her help to open this map that she found on Arcana, a stronghold of the Witches of Dathomir from thousands of years ago. She says, quote, "You have the artist's eye. Tell me what you see," which is silly, admittedly. It doesn't. It's like, really? Because she's an artist, she's good at cracking a puzzle? I don't know.
Sabine helps crack the temple puzzle too, though.
Yes, she does. That's true.
Yeah. So, I mean, she is good at it. We have seen her decipher this kind of stuff before.
Yeah, I know. I just like the logic of it is like, well, because you're just like the way it's presented here, it just seems like it's a little ham-fisted. It's like, hey,
I know what you mean.
We really want you to recognize that she's an artist, everyone. She's an artist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Ahsoka provides Sabine with a map and a scan of the temple. And then they kind of do a little bit of chit-chat. She's like, "What's new? Like, where have you been living?" And she's like, "Well, I just live on the ship." They have obviously some gears to grind with each other because it's like, I go where I'm needed. And she gives the little jab like, well, obviously not always. Yeah. She's just a little snarky, I think, for Ahsoka's liking. And by the way, it's funny because like, and I think Hera brings this up later, which is like, obviously your master must have thought you were difficult at times too.
Yeah.
And then we get the reference to Anakin, but she was also snarky. She was like people would have considered. In fact, people did consider her annoying. So
that's why she got the nickname Snips.
Yeah,
a little bit too snippy.
Exactly. So it's like a little bit of a taste of her own medicine. She's older now. And she doesn't really want to deal with that, but I think that's a fun kind of parallel.
Oh, absolutely.
She even says it here. Ahsoka says, "You never made things easy for me, right? You always made things difficult." So, I feel like they said should have made her a good Jedi. They say, which interesting. Yeah.
I feel like that is the job of not the Padawan, but the the master. I think their job is to not make things easy. Like they're supposed to make things difficult for their Padawans, so
you
their Padawans
learn through challenges. Yeah, that's not. Yeah, if it was too easy, then you end up with Anakin.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So Hu Yang interrupts them with an update, but Sabine wants to take the scan and the map, quote, somewhere else she can think more clearly. So I was kind of like, well, that's silly. Like
Yeah.
this feels a little like forced drama. But again, if you look at it through the lens of she's just trying to be difficult for the sake of being difficult, then I think it works.
Yeah.
Ahsoka basically puts her foot down, saying, "No, you can't leave the ship." Yada yada yada, and reminds her that this is more about than just Ezra, but it's about preventing another war, which I think is also helpful for the audiences to kind of understand the stakes here. Ahsoka meets with Hu Yang about the lightsabers from the mystery Jedi. I love, by the way, these kind of any scene in any show like CSI, whatever, where they break down the evidence. Always fun, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So that's where we get this. So Ahsoka, so Hu Yang was able to reconstruct the hilts, which is again classic CSI stuff. And I love how he goes on this little tangent about how there's like classic design motifs in there. Yeah, big lightsaber nerd. I get it, Hu Yang. Me too. Construction. She says the construction is the same as the way that he taught younglings at the temple. So one of them for sure was a Jedi, and they're Jedi taught, right? He says that the female is a mystery to him, but the other one, Baylan Skoll, is a Jedi from the Clone Wars that went missing after Order 66, right? Which is interesting. So they say the name of the episode. They say A Master and Apprentice here, which is always fun to hear in relation to Star Wars stuff. Again, I just find that the dynamic of Skull and Hati, Shin and Baylan, to be interesting. She's obviously training as a Padawan. She's got the braid, etc.
Yeah,
but they're not aligned as Jedi. They have different motivations, but there's still things that connect him to the Jedi stuff of it, and I just find that kind of loose connection to be interesting, right? It's that, I guess, what people find interesting about the Grey Jedi concept, but which has largely been debunked as a concept by most Star Wars scholars. But anyway, this is like the closest you're going to get to it. But really, kind of, again, if you're Grey, you're not a Jedi, which is what Freddie Prinze Jr. was saying in that big famous rant that he went on. Right? So Hu Yang reminds her that, it's a lot to take on a master and apprentice alone, but maybe you won't be alone anymore, which I also thought was clunky dialogue, but whatever. He does pretty good work with that. Ahsoka tries to tell Sabine about the news, but she's already gone and took the map and the scans.
Yep, of course.
Anything else you want to add about this kind of these few sequences here?
No, I don't. No. I think we can.
Okay, let's keep moving.
Yeah,
we're almost at the end of this episode.
Yeah.
In an homage to Episode 1, A Phantom Menace, we see that Sabine is being tracked by a probe droid, and that Shin has two HK droids with her as escorts. But I just love how you get the shot of them leaving, and then the probe droid, and it's a shot for shot kind of homage to that Episode 1 sequence, and it's very cool. So she's obviously being tracked, which would have been helpful information for her if she knew who she's being tracked by, but she left before she got that information. So Sabine returns to her house and projects the scanner. And this is where the episode kind of slows down for a bit. And this deliberate pacing projects the scan to ponder the answers of the map. How can she solve the puzzle? Back with Ahsoka, she's chatting with Hera via holo. And by the way, I like how often they're just bringing in Hera as a holo and being like, she can't be here all the time, but we can have conversation with her. There's no reason we can't do that.
Yeah.
So they're just chatting. And Ahsoka's annoyed with Hera's counts, Ahsoka is annoyed with Sabine and her stubbornness and her and all that. She's still as stubborn and boorish as ever, she says, which is a great line.
Boorish is a good adjective.
Good adjective. And Hera, of course, counsels patience, right? Taking on that. She's always been that kind of surrogate mother role. She still kind of feels that role here. Ahsoka says I wish she had changed a little, which is such a interesting thing for someone to say, because it's like, how hard it is for people to change. So it's like, really, you thought that you'd leave for all this time and you'd come back and she'd be a completely different person and completely and much more receptive to your style of teaching. It's a little short-sighted on Ahsoka's part.
Yeah, like why would she be any different?
Well,
than
it's a
when you
sign that
left her.
she herself has not changed much, and she's also still stubborn in her own way, right? She says that Hera says to her, "Mentoring someone can be a challenge. I bet your master found you challenging at times." And then Anakin, and then obviously a reference to Anakin, but Ahsoka goes on this whole thing about how Anakin never got to finish his, my training. Talks about how she walked away from him, and the Jedi, and then, which I think is great. We've heard her say those lines before.
Right.
I walked away from him. We've heard it a million times. But what's great about this, which I think really gives the episode a little bit more energy, which is that she connects that same character trait of hers to how she relates to Sabine, which is said, and then I walked away from her, and then this is how she it's like, oh shit,
Yeah.
oops, right? Because she does blame herself about Anakin's fault to some degree, right? And now she and then she tries to walk away from training Grogu, right? She's kind of like, she's not a joiner, as she obviously, as we know, after she leaves the Jedi Order, but she obviously has like this thing that is like stuck in her craw where she can't let herself. She's worried about these attachments, and she's worried about where that will lead, because she has experience with it. But I think she kind of realizes, as she mentions here, or as Hera mentions here, it's like, hey, you can't, you can't worry about that. You have to kind of just, push through it, and you can't let your mistakes of your past kind of repeat themselves over and over and over again. Right?
Well, exactly. Yeah, and I think it maybe softens Ahsoka a little bit when she can kind of get that little bit of a reality check. Like
sure.
Maybe she'll, I don't know, come around a little bit on Sabine to be a little bit easier on her the next time.
Totally. I mean, what's fun about these two episodes is you get kind of both sides. It's like Ahsoka's frustrated with Sabine because Sabine is still stubborn and refusing to kind of fit into her idea of what a Padawan learner would be, right?
Exactly.
And then Sabine is frustrated with Ahsoka because she's stubborn and won't accept her for who she is, right? So it's like you kind of get both angles of it, and Hera plays the great middleman here, where she kind of helps soften all the edges for everybody, right?
Which is what she did a lot in Rebels.
Yes, that was just really, that was basically her main job. That and flying the ship.
Yeah.
Okay, so Sabine, meanwhile, seems to have hit a wall and decides to rethink things by erasing some of the superlative information from the scan of the temple, focusing instead on the idea of three, eventually being left with only the kind of symbol on the ground, which is a Celtic symbol that means like the triad, basically.
Yeah, it's like a Trinity knot or something like that.
Yeah. It's a really cool symbol. It's always been very cool. People get this tattooed on themselves all the time.
Yes.
So this gives her an idea, and she starts turning this like Rubik's Cube sphere thing, eventually unlocking it. It floats in the air, projects the Star Wars galaxy out from its core, and then pulls back even further. It shoots this gold beam to another galaxy, to a specific star that is far, far away. Yeah, far away from even this far away galaxy.
Far and farther, yeah.
Farther away galaxy. That's right. And so she's like, I've done it. But just as she's starting to celebrate, and she like takes her binoculars and like looks out at the stars or whatever, she's ambushed by one of the HK droids. She's grabbed, and while she's grabbed, the other droid takes the map, destroys all of her research, and makes a getaway. She manages to escape the droid by shooting it in the leg, which is a pretty cool move. Yeah. And then, but can't catch the other droid before it reaches the elevator. It gets down to the bottom before she can do anything about it, but radios Huyang for backup. Then things kick into high gear. Sabine grabs her lightsaber, which is Ezra's old lightsaber, and again, we also get the reference to the helmet here. She goes down to grab, not her helmet, but the lightsaber.
Yeah.
And heads down to confront Shin and the droid that stole the map. And then we get a standoff here, fight sequence with Sabine and Shin. Sabine is, she lights up her lightsaber like a badass, but really can't hold her own.
No.
And she's really kind of she's kind of being toyed with by Shin.
I think so a little bit, yeah. And it's, I thought all the cape flowing.
Oh, she does all these like cool poses. She's really badass.
She is.
I like Shin. I feel like she's a type that you could convince to turn to the good side. That's how I feel about that.
Definitely. She's I don't know. She's interesting though. She's definitely a little dead-eyed. You know what I mean? Like she's got this
Sure,
creepy.
she's scary
I don't know,
looking.
like
Yeah,
you would see in like a creepy ghost movie, like a dead ghost girl.
sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
She's
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
got that look to her.
Dead ghost
But
girl. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
no, but I liked all her kind of use of her cape moves and stuff to sort of like distract, and I don't know.
Right.
I thought it was neat, but yeah, you're right. It was like you can see that Sabine is very choppy with her movements and not
She's
very
super
unsure.
cautious at first, and
Yeah.
she does try to make the first move, but it's very all her moves look kind of sloppy.
Yeah, yeah. Which is
And
like
yeah.
it's funny to me that she would go for the lightsaber and not her Mandalorian armor because it's like is she not more.
But she didn't know that guy. She didn't know that.
That's fair.
She thought she was chasing down a droid.
Yeah, that's true actually cuz I think she's way more efficient with her Mandalorian.
Well, yeah, she could have cut. I
Stuff.
mean, if she had her rocket pack, she could have just flown down after.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So,
But
yeah.
So Ahsoka meanwhile rushes to her, with their ship to try to come help. Like I said, Sabine is not really doing so well. I was saying this whole time as she was fighting, she's gonna lose a limb. Like
Yeah.
something's gonna get cut off. We don't like someone's gonna lose a hand.
Yeah. She's
Ahsoka
gonna get a
spots them,
robot hand.
yeah, exactly. But before she can get there, Shin stabs Sabine through the gut, and Ahsoka arrives just in time, I guess, to bring her to the hospital.
Yeah.
And Shin gets away. Cut to credits. We see to our friend Ray, obviously referencing Ray Stevenson, and then we get the credit sequence. Any final thoughts here on this fight sequence and how we end this episode?
No, I thought it was a really like super climactic ending. It's great. Like it's just, and it made me very much appreciative that we got two episodes for this one because I'm like, okay, sweet, because I was so much ready for more. I honestly didn't think Sabine was dead, but
I thought it would have been a very bold idea to introduce this character and then kill her in the first episode.
Yeah,
like I think it would have been like, whoa, the stakes are super high. I think that that's how I kind of feel about that, but I think you can't really get away with that.
No, well, no, but and they also they give it away in the trailers and stuff because you see her with short hair and stuff in the trailers.
Still, yeah, this is true, but still.
But yeah,
and I guess that's why like you can't end on that cliffhanger because it's like it's kind of like a weightless hit cliffhanger. It doesn't really have that punch that you hope for, but it's still a cool way to end an episode.
No, it is like you always like a good lightsaber fight. So and not that it was amazing,
like a
but
stab
you know what I mean.
to the chest.
Yeah, exactly.
I
also
again,
just
not lethal this time. I guess maybe if she'd laid there a couple minutes longer, it's unclear to me how that works. Why does I guess maybe I mean,
Reva got stabbed in the gut twice and survived both times too, so
that's a good point.
And
it's really just dead. It's only fatal for Qui-Gon.
Yeah. His was maybe higher up. I don't know.
It is maybe a little higher, and maybe like he's got maybe because the double-bladed lightsaber is like big, thicker or something. It like hit his heart or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm really just making up excuses. It doesn't really make sense, to be honest.
No, but
why I mean, because the script said so. I get it, but
pretty much
like there's other things that you could like. We know about the robotic hands and the robotic limbs. She could have just had a robot leg or something if she like had her leg cut off, right? Like you know what I'm saying? Like it's like that's I'm okay with that. It would have easily just like or have her arm cut off. All those things we know are solvable in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
And in fact, almost every Star Wars thing involves a hand being cut off. I thought, we'd start with this with having Sabine's hand cut off. That'd be pretty cool. Right? Really sets the stakes. But again, no, we're just going to stab her through the chest and she's going to be fine in the next episode. So, I don't know.
Not the chest. It was like the side of her gut.
Yeah, so only the part that like can give you like all sorts of internal problems that are hard to I guess because it's a lightsaber it's not so bad. I don't know.
It cauterizes as it stabs, so it's fine. But I also just wanted to note that I thought it was cool in Sabine's whatever you want to call it home. You can see Ezra's collection of Stormtrooper helmets in the corner.
Yes,
which was
I thought
cool.
that too.
I was like, oh, she kept all this stuff.
The painted one even too is there, and then obviously she's added some of her own artwork to the walls.
Oh, of course, yeah. But
it's cool.
I just thought it was neat that they had all those. I was like, oh, that's sweet that they like added those in.
They obviously love that set because they go back to it like a million times over these two episodes. So they really want to get the most out of that set, and I understand that it's got full of all sorts of details that are really fun. Should mention, I didn't mention this. Mary Elizabeth Winstead plays Hera in live action here. We haven't mentioned that.
Right, yes.
An actress that I think people probably have a mixed feeling on. She hasn't done a lot of work over the last few years. She's been in stuff, but like not a lot of stuff that people have seen, to be honest. So you might recognize her from things like Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Right.
She's in Birds of Prey, Live Free Die Hard, and 10 Cloverfield Lane. But largely speaking, she hasn't had a huge career, but a solid actress nonetheless. I think this one, I guess I said before, her performance is the one that I'm the most picky with. I feel like
fair enough.
It just feels the most different from the cartoon version. But.
Isn't she married to Ewan McGregor?
I don't know the answer to that question. If so, that's interesting.
I think they are married. I'm pretty sure.
Or were married? Are they still married?
Let me see here. Ewan McGregor, wife. Yeah. Oh wait, married. Oh no, married 2022. Yeah, very new wife.
Oh, okay. So they're freshly married.
Freshly married.
Good for them. Another Star Wars couple. Reminds me, of course, of.
So I was like, are we calling nepotism? Is that what we're saying?
It's possible. I guess yeah. So her, So Freddie Prinze Jr. and what's her name, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, are both in Star Wars Rebels.
Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Yeah, 2-3 named people, so that works together. And now we have these two. They're not in the same series, but it works. It's the big universe. It's fine. Anyway, so that's episode 1. Any final thoughts on the first episode? I thought it was basically perfect.
No, I don't think so.
So we had lots of stuff to introduce there. Hopefully we can cruise through episode 2. Slightly shorter, coming in at 44 minutes. Season 1, episode 2, Toil and Trouble. Obviously a reference to Macbeth and the witches in Macbeth. Double, Toil and Trouble, etc., etc.
Right. I always forget that's from Macbeth.
Yes, that is from Macbeth. Highly recommend watching the Apple TV Plus version of Macbeth that came out last year. It's nominated for some Oscars. I think it won a couple of them as well. And it has some big name actors in it, we'll just say. So I really, if you're looking for like a modern interpretation of a very obviously classic story, it is all in Shakespearean, but I think they do a really good job of making it work and make sense. It's all in black and white too. It's very stylish. Okay, so Toil and Trouble. Obviously, this must be in reference to the fact that Morgan Elsbeth is a witch. I think that's as simple as that.
Yeah, I would assume so.
Yeah. So this is directed by Steph Green. Steph Green is a director I'm not familiar with, but we will just quickly take a peek at her IMDb and see if there's anything that jumps off the page. So directed by Steph Green, written by Dave Filoni. I'm pretty sure the entire series is written by Dave Filoni, so I don't think that's necessarily a surprise, but again, we'll take a quick peek here. She's known for directing episodes of The Americans. She directed an episode of The Book of Boba Fett. And also did an episode of Watchmen on HBO, and that is a great show. Also did 2 episodes of The L Word, Man in the High Castle. So longtime TV director, but really good work, like Bates Motel, The Americans, Preacher, Luke Cage, The Deuce, great show, I like that. The Man in the High Castle, Watchmen, The L Word, Book of Boba Fett, and Ahsoka. I mean, that she's got a good track record there from as far as television series. Though it looks like she only ever does like 1 or 2 episodes a season, so she might be kind of what we consider to be like a journeyman or a journeywoman director.
Okay.
Who kind of comes in and fills in, but we'll see. I think she holds her own here. It's a adequately directed episode. I think it jumps off the page at me, but I think it's pretty good. We return to a standard coloring motif for the introduction of Lucasfilm logo, red and blue helmets, and the yellow Star Wars font. So that all comes back to normal here in the second episode, which I'm fine with. We don't have to do that for the whole series. And we start on Lothal. We pick up with Ahsoka, not Osaka. That's a place in Japan. We pick up with Ahsoka reliving the last episode, basically, in her mind, while Sabine recovers in a med bay. Sabine's first thought as she wakes up is that the droids took the map and tells Ahsoka about, how she unlocked the map, but she has no way of, none of that stuff that she found has been preserved. It was all destroyed by the droids. She does give her information how there was 2 galaxies, but doesn't really have any more information than that. Ahsoka wants to know kind of how many droids were there with her. She says, "Oh, there were 2, but I took one out, etc." And then she basically storms off, and Ahsoka, Sabine's like, "Oh, you need my help." And then we get this classic line, which is a little bit a cliche, which is that you've done enough, right? And spoken in that tone where it's like, it always sounds like cover, which is like, oh no, you've already helped already as much as you need, which would be the nice way of saying it. But you've done enough kind of implies that you've made a mess of things enough. But Ahsoka's right to be pissed here. She didn't want her to leave the ship with the map. If she had waited and learned about the people that were after them or after the map, she might have been more prepared to defend herself.
Well, exactly.
Right?
At least staying together.
Yeah, exactly. At least stay together and have the backup. So instead, her stubbornness cost her the map, her health. She almost died. And so from Ahsoka's perspective, like she's reckless and can't be trusted. And so I kind of understand where Ahsoka's coming from here. Moving on, we go to a new mystery planet, which we find out very quickly is called Cetos. Cool name for a planet. Also cool look to it too. It's got like red forests, which is kind of cool. Baylan and Shin land their cool transport in front of another ancient temple-like stone formation, kind of similar to Stonehenge. Baylan puts the map on a stone slab. It twists and unlocks, and then something happens. Nothing. He's kind of like, okay, we've done enough. Let's call the boss. And the line, which I think is really, I mean, like, I don't know how you come up with this line, but they say that, quote, they found the reflex point on Cetos, which is all those syllables together, which really only 2 of those words, reflex point. I don't really know what that means in this context. And Cetos is a made up word, but it sounds really cool all together, coming from, from this character and from this actor. And I just again, there's a presence to this character, a mystery, something that I want to peel back the layers and understand more about Baylan. And obviously, again, really played really cool by Ray Stevenson here. But I don't know what the reflex point means. I think maybe it's like the launching point is kind of probably what they mean for the trip into that next galaxy, right? Which I think has got to be challenging to reach because you need the right fuel or however it works, or enough fuel to get there. It's far away. So they need to have the right staging area. So I guess that's what that means. You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. Like, even when they said that, I was like, what are they talking about? So, because I was like, there wasn't really enough. This is where I need you to explain it to me as the, you know what I mean, as the audience. Like, this is where I need some exposition for you to be like, tell me what you're talking about.
A reflex point? What the fuck are you talking about?
What does that mean? I've never heard that term before, so okie doke. I just assumed they needed to be in a specific point in their galaxy to know which direction to go in, is kind of what I was thinking they were talking about. But
it just sounds cool. I think.
I was like, all right, I guess so. Because later on when they kind of like open everything up, it aligns.
Yeah, it's like a compass.
Some stuff. So I'm like, okay, it's just like another point of the key or whatever you need to like read.
It's classic like action adventure storytelling, Indiana Jones stuff. You get a thing that leads you to another thing that leads you to another thing, right? That leads you to the big bad, whatever.
Exactly.
Right? We do get this lingering shot though of what's his name again? Baylan. We're getting along to this episode, so my brain is starting to turn to mush. But we get this lingering shot with Baylan as he looks up into the sky, and we see a Purgle, like the outline of a Purgle in the clouds.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, at first I didn't see it the first time, but on rewatch I think it's there, and maybe I'm just seeing things, but it is cool. It's hard to see, like he feels like he's indifferent about the creatures there, but it'd be interesting to see kind of what his thoughts are. I just really want to know everything about this character, but it's up there. I guess the idea being that they're maybe following the like a migration path of these whales or something like that. Anyway, so cut to title card. Then we go back to Lothal. Ahsoka is examining the scene at Sabine's tower. Do you feel like what she's doing is like Force echoes from the Jedi Fallen Order games?
What Ahsoka's doing?
Yeah, she's like walking through the scene where Sabine got
Oh.
stabbed, right? And
Yeah,
she's like
I don't know.
listening to the objects or to the space
Oh.
and like hearing things. So
I
I
did
kind of, I
not.
think is that's like Force echoes. That's my assumption.
Maybe. I mean, I did not think of that immediately. I thought she was just there for the base reason that they tell us she's there
Well,
because
yeah.
she thinks that droid is still hiding. I didn't pick up on that, but I mean, maybe.
Well, we hear lines of dialogue from the last episode and like of the standoff where she wasn't there.
Oh,
So
okay.
I feel like it's Force echoes. That's my thing, because it's introduced. We know that is of a concept. What it is, a Force echo from the Jedi Fallen Order games, is this concept that the Force leaves this kind of like echo, for lack of a better term,
Right.
defining the word with the word of what happened to that thing previously, especially I guess when confronted by other Force sensitive beings, right? They kind of leave this.
But I
this
thought
mark.
that was like an ability that not everybody had.
Maybe not everyone has that, but maybe Ahsoka learned it.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Because that's kind of like the dagger.
Maybe she learned it from
right?
him. Maybe she learned it from what's his name, the redhead,
Cal Kestis.
Cal Kestis. Yeah,
maybe. Yeah,
it's possible. He hasn't shown up yet, but he might still. I mean, it's
Oh.
likely he's going to show up in live action at some point. They wouldn't.
I mean, yeah, they made the character look exactly like the real life person who voices him.
Exactly. So she goes up into the tower, doesn't pet the cat, which is big no-no.
What the hell,
opinion.
Ahsoka?
Yeah, pretty rude. So she sees that Sabine was looking at Ezra's message, as the remaining HK droid that was left behind tries to ambush her. She easily removes its head with her saber, and takes it back to the med bay for Sabine to kind of do her thing. So Sabine here is like, she's still in her med bay, but she's helping extract information from the droid to find out where it came from. Which is, I think, there's a lot of like tech stuff here where they kind of describe how that works. Doesn't really matter. They explain it well enough in the episode. It's all gobbledygook anyway, but
Gobbledygook.
Well, it's just all made up stuff. It doesn't,
Yeah.
Like the thing connects us to the thing, and then because that thing was there, the memory's still there. Sure.
Right.
It doesn't matter. They in Star Trek they call it teching the tech. It's because it's the same kind of concept.
Oh, yeah.
So I just wanted to mention that I love the sound design and the, I guess, physical design of the head of these HK droids. It looks heavy. It sounds heavy. It's got that like heavy metal, like sliding, clanking sound and matte finish. It just feels like a piece of military tech. It looks
definitely.
really cool. Yeah. So she plugs into the back of this thing, and there's this whole like gimmick about how if she's plugged in too long, it'll explode. It's very video gamey in execution, but it works. It even comes with a fancy like indicator to tell you when it explodes, which is handy. Hu Yang is worried that it's going to explode, but so he pulls the plug before it reaches critical. By the way, I also like the line where Hera says, "I think you guys should do it." She's like, "Well, that's because you're a hologram." So that, I think that's funny. Anyway, they extract the information from the droid. It turns out that it came from Corellia, and Corellia is called out by Hera here is the New Republic shipyard, or formerly the Imperial shipyard.
And where Han Solo is from.
Important to note, we've been there. We visited it in Solo. Have we been there any other times?
Weren't they there in Andor, or am I making that up? I could be wrong. I can't remember.
Think so.
Maybe
they're
not.
on a similar looking planet with like the water and the long stretches of thing. Anyway, Corellia, cool design. We've only, I think, mostly seen it at night. So in this case, we get to see it like brightly lit. I actually really like how normally during the Imperial era, when we see these planets that are under Imperial control, it's dark, it's spooky, there's smog everywhere, right? And it's got this air of darkness, for lack of a better term. And now, under the New Republic era, we kind of get to see these same locations, but it's bright and sunny, and the air is clear. And I think it creates a nice contrast between the two kind of ways that despite, as they say, all the people are basically the same, but the way that it's portrayed and the way it's shown just feels a lot lighter.
Yeah.
So they believe that Morgan Elsbeth had operations on Corellia, and so they're going to look into that. So Ahsoka and Hera agree to meet on Corellia to look into Morgan's operations. Ahsoka storms off without Sabine, who is still recovering. But the hologram of Hera sticks around to chat with Sabine, and this is kind of where she has the alternate conversation that she had with Ahsoka last episode. And Sabine is frustrated with Ahsoka, but Hera insists that Ahsoka needs her help even if she doesn't realize it, and that she needs to just stick to it, that she'll eventually crack her shell is basically her counsel here. I love the line here. It's just like, you guys are both difficult. I always thought that that's what made it work, which is such a good line.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on this sequence or this conversation that Sabine has with Hera here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just kind of reminiscent of, again, like their relationship through Rebels a bit, right? Like I feel like Hera spent a lot of time fixing little problems between everybody, right? And
Sure.
yeah, she is kind of doing it again and kind of getting both of them to realize things about themselves, right?
Sure. Exactly. Again, she's playing the kind of like the matchmaker.
Yeah, and the
bit,
mother again. It's
Yeah.
like she's mom all over again.
Totally. Okay, so where were we? Back at Cetos, Morgan Elsbeth has arrived, and she's got this really cool golden shuttle, which I thought was a pretty badass. Baylan is curious about who built the structure. Again, I love Baylan as a character because not only is he, Force sensitive, former Jedi, obviously, but curious, doesn't know everything, but is still curious to learn about new things, right?
Mm-hmm.
He mentions, he's like, I know this wasn't the Jedi who built it, so who did? She says that it was an ancient people from a distant galaxy. So it could be the Chiss. What's your thoughts on it? Is that your prediction that it's the Chiss, which is of course Thrawn's species?
But that doesn't really make sense because I don't think the Chiss would ever be there. I don't know. Or I thought maybe
the Chiss are in the unknown regions, right?
Aren't they? I thought they're in their own region.
Listen. I'm asking you.
They call it
the books.
They call it the Chaos.
Okay, so I feel like that's probably in their still existing universe. So it's probably not the Chiss. If they're from another galaxy, it has to be something else.
I thought maybe
right?
like the Zepho.
Oh, maybe the Zepho too. I also thought about the Zepho, but I feel like we would see more Zepho shaped things.
Yeah, and I feel like Zepho is more like higher tech, almost too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I love a good spooky. Oh, it was somebody else from.
There is a species that comes from outside the galaxy in the extended universe that follows the whole Thrawn stuff. Can't remember what they're called, but they're like immune to Force stuff.
Okay.
It could be that. It would be interesting. I don't know. I don't know much about that. I can't remember what they're called, but we'll have to come back to that as a concept.
Yeah, I'm not there yet in any of the books. But I do know that there is like a big bad. That
it's from the extended universe. I don't think they've not canonized it at all yet.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But it's possible that it's like whoever the Chiss are always fighting is what they're fighting against. There's a lot of possibilities here.
Yuzhong Vong?
The Yuzhong Vong. Yeah. Which again, I don't know anything about that. Like
me neither.
Organic or something. I don't. The organic tech or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
They're like big bugs or something. I don't know. It's not in the canon. So if they are canonizing them here, it seems like the species that they're coming against are humanoid shaped, given like the shapes on the wall and all that kind of stuff. But I guess we'll see. So Morgan Elsbeth uses her magic, and that's that green flame that we see ignite here. The perfect shade of green. They totally nailed that. And she accesses the map and activates the structure. We see that this like cool compass-like hologram appears around them, and Morgan uses her powers to adjust the holograms to just the right way to reveal their destination in another galaxy. It looks like they're on like this launching pad, so it like draws a straight line from the planet out of the galaxy and straight to the other galaxy.
Yeah.
Here's something. Okay, I didn't mention this in the last episode when they opened the map, but I find it really fascinating that they're opening up the door to another galaxy, right? The whole thing is that this is from a galaxy far, far away, right? and that everything that we've ever seen in Star Wars has existed within the same Star Wars galaxy. All the species, all the planets, everything. They're all in that. And it was kind of comforting to know it all fits within this space, right? We have a understanding of the Milky Way to some extent, right? We're a part of it as that galaxy. But we don't obviously have the network to travel it like they do in the Star Wars galaxy. But, galaxies are far apart, right? There's a lot of empty space in between. And it's kind of like a completely open question mark. It could be literally anything over another galaxy.
Yeah.
How do you feel about them kind of expanding that?
I think it's very cool. And to me, it's interesting. Like, is it difficult for them to travel to another galaxy? Is this something
Seems
that
like
happens or not? And yeah, it's like, how difficult is it for them? How unknown is it for them? Like, have people done this before? You know what I mean? Like, that kind of stuff is very interesting to me. Like, okay, so are you staying within your own galaxy all the time or not? But opening it up is like really neat.
Well, it could be like maybe this galaxy was settled by the people from that galaxy, and then
well, exactly,
or whatever. It's like there's all sorts of possibilities.
And I mean, it's just there's so much opportunity there for, I don't know, more imagination when it comes to another galaxy, right?
Sure.
We're not just seeing fucking Tatooine again and Jakku, which
I swear to God, if we
Tatooine.
see Tatooine and Jakku, if we get to this new galaxy and it's just a desert planet, I will be pissed. Can you imagine?
Exactly.
Oh, man.
Exactly. So, yeah, it just opens the door for a much more interesting story, I think. Because
I didn't even imagine. I didn't even consider that, and now I'm fucking worried that they're going to bring in a goddamn desert planet on another galaxy.
Well, it's not even that. It's like, okay, so you're opening the door to another galaxy, so who's running that galaxy?
What if it's our galaxy?
And here's Earth.
They do that in one random comic, and then it turns out that Chewie is Bigfoot.
Is Bigfoot? Yeah, I know. And is it like, something like that?
It's so stupid.
And Han Solo becomes Indiana Jones or some stupid shit. I don't know.
That's so funny. I didn't know that. That's funny.
I don't think he becomes Indiana Jones, but it's like something like that. I don't. It's like Indiana Jones is like a descendant of him.
Right,
I
don't
know.
Whatever. It's funny.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I just mean it opens up the door for like who's running this other galaxy, right? Like, is there another big bad? Is there a bigger bad there that
there has to? I mean,
which is kind of cool.
I guess there kind of has to be, but it has to be more than empty, right?
Yeah. No, they just open it up. It's like, oh, here's some stars, and that's it.
There's a bunch of empty planets, and Thrawn and Ezra just been hanging out in this abandoned planet this whole time.
Yeah,
they're best buds now.
Yeah, exactly like how Zeb and Callus became buddies.
Exactly. Yeah. By the way, you think we're gonna see Callus in this?
Maybe we could.
We saw Zeb in Mando season 3.
Yes, we did.
I've heard one podcast I listened to basically said I think we saw them. We saw Zeb in season 3 of Mando because we need to account for their whereabouts because otherwise, like, we have all the rest of the crew but not Zeb. It'd be weird. So
yeah,
we'll see. I mean, anything's on the table at this point. That's what's so exciting about Ahsoka. It's like there's so many potential possibilities, characters that could pop up, in connections and all sorts of stuff. So we shall see. Okay, so Baylan calls this line to this other galaxy the pathway to Peridia, which is also fucking cool to hear him say.
Yeah.
And he says that it's old stories from the Jedi Temple. That's what the kids at the Jedi Temple would call it. But it was just rumors. And he feels that the path forward is clouded. He's not sure what to do. Morgan says that Thrawn calls to her across time and space, again, which alludes to potentially the world between worlds. And I love this line also from Baylan. You speak of dreams, vague and fractured hopes. And then Morgan says, the thread of fate do not lie. The threads of fate do not lie. But this is a little bit nitpicky. I genuinely don't care, but I'm going to mention it because I know some people get annoyed. The threads of fate is specifically a reference to Greek mythology. So it's weird when you reference like a common saying like the threads of fate, what has like an analog directly, a straight line drawn directly to human history. It's kind of has it's there's a lot of ways to explain it away. Some people get annoyed by it. I mostly don't care, but I thought I'd mention it because I know some people kind of get nitpicky about that kind of thing. Also, the Eye of Sion, which they mention next. The Eye of Sion. The word Sion is also has a history in in Earth history, which means, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it means the heir, right? The heir to the throne type of idea, which is fun, right?
But I mean,
the heir to the Empire,
They've used Scion before, though, with
Yeah, I mean,
Darth Scion.
Well, really, which Darth is that?
Darth Scion is from Knights of the Old Republic. He's like the
well,
zombie one with the one white eye.
That's not canon, so I don't.
Oh, okay.
That. Yeah,
it's not canon? I thought it was.
It's not. It's loosely. They kind of just don't address it. It's so long in the past they don't really talk about it.
Okay.
But like they sometimes canonize some things with the Old Republic,
right.
but not everything. So
fair enough. But whatever. He was a Sith Lord that.
Sure, that's kind of a cool name.
Kept bringing himself back to life, basically, but at a cost. So he kept looking like a zombie and stuff.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Yeah, he's creepy looking. But yeah, he has one white creepy eye.
Well, Eye of Sion, really cool. So we find out what the Eye of Sion is. It's a big, like, hyperspace ring, basically, powered by a bunch of Super Star Destroyer hyperspace drives, which is also really cool.
Is that what it is? Because to me, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
Okay. It's like those like those hyperspace rings that they use for the smaller Jedi ships.
For the Jedi starfighters, yes, from the Clone Wars. Exactly. And hyperspace rings are a cool concept. I just think it's a cool idea. They've always thought that there was like, you have to leave them behind. It's a risk, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
It's like a trade-off. But in this case, they needed the extra power so that they can get across this like void, right?
Right.
So that's really cool. Also, the Eye of Sion, heir to the Empire. Sion means heir. Eye, it's a round shape. It's it's kind of straightforward. It makes sense.
Well, that's why I thought like it was referencing, like people thought it was referencing like Darth Sion too, because they like to do that in Star Wars, like reference old Sith Lords and stuff. So like the Eye of Sion, because Darth Sion had that.
Yeah,
creepy
but
eye.
in this case, we're not dealing with Sith. We're dealing with
That's true.
Witches, and another species that never even knew about the Jedi until this one came around. So, with the Chiss. So we'll see. So they say that the Eye of Sion is on the way to the planet. So I guess it was being constructed in secret somewhere and is now being brought into the staging area. Shin asks Baylan what happens when they find Thrawn. I should mention, Morgan reveals that while they're making sure that this all goes as planned, that they should send the Merrick, that Inquisitor,
yes,
to help complete the task of bringing the last engine, basically, which we find out later. So she's like, this all has to go smoothly. Send your best people. Merrick is sent to complete the task. Shin asks Baylan once Morgan leaves, what happens when they find Thrawn? And this is where I feel like potentially Shin has a bit of a softer side, right? So, and again, really brilliant line execution here from Stevenson. And he says, for some, war. For others, a new beginning. So, for some, war, I think he's referencing the New Republic. If Grand Admiral Thrawn returns, it means war for the New Republic. For others, new beginning. It's a new beginning, a new chance to start the Empire all over again. That's what that means for Morgan Elsbeth and others. And for us, power, such as you've never dreamed. What do you think that is in reference to? Just like being given power by a new galactic order, or what are they referencing here?
I honestly, I'm not sure. Like, it's like kind of, to me, it's almost like everybody has their own different motivations, right? For something. So I don't know, maybe also alluding to like, okay, what are these two? Like, what are him and Shin's motivations too, right?
Yeah.
Like, why are you linking up with this witch woman, and like, what's your end game? Why do you care?
We don't know anything about their end game. That's what's so fascinating about these two, about this little gaggle of force wielders.
Yeah, it's neat.
Yeah, it is really neat. Anyway, Baylan sends Shin to go to Corellia to assist Merrick. So she's off to Corellia. Everyone's off to Corellia. So we cut to Corellia. As Ahsoka arrives on her ship, we are treated to a shot of orbital shipyards over the planet. Also, always very cool. before following our ship down to see aerial shots of the planet consistent with what we've seen before, but brightly lit this time. Star Destroyers are being disassembled, so we get some kind of cool shots of that. Lots of disassembled Star Destroyers. We got to also see some of that in the last season of Mando on Coruscant. Ahsoka lands next to the Phantom. So we see the Phantom there, the new Phantom, which was the last scene in the finale of Rebels, which is actually a Clone Wars era shuttle, which is cool, where Hera is waiting for her. We also meet Win Reaver, the regional supervisor for this part of the planet. And Win Reaver, by the way, played by Peter Jacobson.
Yeah.
Longtime character actor. Really has that, like, greasy look down.
Yeah. He plays really like a doctor on House. The show House.
Yes. Yes, that's where I recognize him from.
Yes,
Dr. Chris Taub.
Chris Taub, yeah. I immediately started giggling. I was like, that's Dr. Taub. Like
he also was on The Americans, so maybe that's the connection to the director, and maybe that's where that comes from.
Yeah. He does a good job, though, playing this kind of...
Oh, yeah, he's great. Yeah,
he does a really good job.
Like I said, long-time character actor, lots of TV and all sorts of stuff over the years. Working actor, as we call those. So we meet this guy. He's kind of blowing them off, saying, like, listen, I'm really busy right now. But listen, trust me, all the Imperial assets were dissolved and redistributed after the Empire fell. So listen, just take my word for it. And anyway, Ahsoka insists, and Hera pulls rank. So they go and inspect these facilities that were used to be owned and run by Morgan Elsbeth. So the facility in question, apparently, according to Win Reaver, supplies raw materials, or did during the Imperial era, supplied raw materials for hyperdrive construction on Imperial-class Star Destroyers. Now, apparently, they're taking apart those drives to power the new Republic fleet. Old staff is still on board. There's, top to bottom, basically everyone was still there. Hera's worried about their loyalty, but this Win guy says you'll find ex-Imperials at every level of the New Republic government. Again, planting that seed about how they're kind of were corrupted from the inside this time. Well, the Old Republic was corrupted from the inside as well. This one a little bit more overtly in this case. And she says, aren't you worried about their loyalty? And by the way, loyalty is such a loaded word. You often hear it in reference to fascism, right? But in this case, it's like, aren't you worried that they're still loyal to the Empire, the fascist sort of the government? And he says, listen, I'm a businessman, General. My loyalty is to my investors, right? Which they touch on later. Turns out not loyalty, just greed.
Yeah.
Which is a great line from Ahsoka, to be honest. Classic stuff. And very prescient, in my opinion, for today. Sabine and Ahsoka have a conversation while they're on the way to the command center. Ahsoka is still annoyed with Sabine, as I mentioned before, despite her helping them figure out where the whole Corellia connection, which Hera rightly points out, right? Which I think helps soften this a little.
Definitely,
Hera wants Ahsoka to take Sabine back as her apprentice. She's like, listen, it would probably be good for the both of you if you had kind of like, someone helping you who knows your whole deal. It'd be good for her because she needs, she's kind of lost her way a little bit. So, it would be good for the both of you. I'd recommend it, right? And Ahsoka says that she's not ready, right? She said, listen, I would consider it, but she's not ready. And Hera, I love this. She's like, curious, what does being ready actually mean? And then this, I also really like too, which is, although maybe cliche, she says, you just know. And so do they, right? So she knows that it's just a sense of things. She knows she's not ready, but when she is, she'll make it clear. Right, and we get that at the end of this episode, so it works out. Any comments about this Corellia sequence and conversation?
No, I mean, it's definitely just kind of foreboding. Like, as soon as they're talking about their loyalties, it's like you just know that something's about to go down.
The average person doesn't care about who's in charge.
Yeah.
Right? They just care about if they get paid.
Yeah. It's like, sure. But yeah, it's nice that we're finally kind of getting a little bit more of this kind of Ahsoka, Sabine story, right?
Sure.
At least a little bit more of a feel for it. But yeah, I mean, I kind of want to see this go farther, and see Ahsoka kind of take her back on or try and train her up a little bit more.
Sure.
But I guess we'll see if that actually ends up happening or not.
Well,
If
she
they can
does
get
call her
past their
Padawan at the end of the
right.
at the end of
Yes.
the episode.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
okay, so we cut back to Lothal, right? They know, so do they. Cut back to Lothal. Sabine, she's now mostly recovered. Hu Yang comes in to check in on her, and again, this is where it feels like if you have David Tennant, you're going to use him, right?
Yeah.
So,
of course.
who, by the way, was a former doctor on Doctor Who. So, if you, for those who might not be aware, it has the sci-fi cojones and the chops, as they say. So, Hu Yang notes, "Oh, look, it's your lightsaber," and because of course that's what he would mention because he loves lightsabers. That's his whole deal.
Yes.
And then reminding her that it is in fact her lightsaber and not Ezra's anymore. He says that, listen, he passed it on to you. You made some modifications of your own. It's now your lightsaber.
Yeah.
And that maybe you should start training again. But she's reluctant. She just like, it's not up to me. Ahsoka doesn't want to train me. And Hu Yang's quick to point out, listen, that's a poor excuse, right? If you wanted this, you can make this happen, right? And it says the great line here: "The past is the past. Move forward," right? And
yeah.
Sabine keeps pushing, saying, she says, "Well, did she even want me here? Right? Like, did she? If you could have figured out the map, would you have even called me? Right?"
Right. Yeah.
And in the end, fair enough. I think that's like that's normal self-conscious feelings coming to light there, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And she just doesn't want to feel like she was being used, right? And
Well, of
and
course,
getting left behind.
No, I totally get her
Yeah.
not disappointment, but her backlash there of being like, well,
Totally.
you wouldn't even be here if you didn't need me, right?
We didn't even be here.
So.
She didn't even go here.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, and the line from the droid is, "General Syndulla thought your insights would be valuable. Lady Tano agreed." Right.
Yeah.
I love how he just states things very plainly, but always adds a little bit of flavor to kind of lean it in the direction he wants. Right. She says that, "See, she wasn't even thinking about me." Sabine says, which is such a bratty thing to say. And she says, "To be fair," the droid says, you never indicated you wanted to come back." Right? It's like, again,
Right.
if this you have the power to control your own fate. You're the master of your own ship, right? So if you want to play the blame game, you want to point to say, "It's not my lightsaber. She doesn't want to train me. There's nothing I can do." Oh, wham, big baby, right? But and rightly so, Hu Yang points out, like, listen, all these things are up to you. If you want to pick up the lightsaber again, you can do that. If you want to, reach out and make make an attempt to connect with Ahsoka again, that's all within your control. Right? Don't let the past and the what stings from what happened before, which we don't know all the details about, influence your decisions now.
Yeah.
You need to think about what's best for you.
Yeah. That, and it's like, it's almost like one of you needs to make that effort, or needs to make
someone has to put the first move.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. So.
And then Sabine gets down on herself now. She's like, "You're right." But she admits that she never had the innate force talents of Ezra, right?
Right.
And funnily, I think Hu Yang agrees, saying that,
Yeah.
he knew many Padawans over the centuries, and I can safely say that your aptitude for the Force would fall short of them all, which is so cruel.
He's like, "You're the worst I've ever seen."
Yeah, thanks a lot. And anyway, they kind of work it out. He says, "The only time that you're wasting is your own," and hands her the saber, which she reluctantly accepts, which is pretty cool. And by the way, a Mandalorian who's also a Jedi,
very cool.
Hasn't been a lot of those, right? Not since the Darksaber and the original wielder of the Darksaber.
Yeah, not since the Mandalorian.
Exactly. So maybe they're setting her up to be the new ruler of Mandalore, and whatever Mandalore is left with here. We'll see.
Just gonna have to fight Bo-Katan.
Yeah, maybe. Or maybe Bo-Katan's really softened up, and she kind of is like, you know what?
Yeah.
Not worth it. Not worth it. So back to Corellia. At the control center, we learn that they repurpose everything from the old ISDs to fund different New Republic reconstruction programs, among other things, including unique hardware, quote unquote, which only the investors and board get first look at, right? Which presumably could mean that that's the kind of thing that they're building is like or designing are the new style, the First Order Resurgent class Star Destroyers.
Yeah.
And Resurgent class TIE fighters and all that kind of stuff. That could be kind of what they're alluding to there. Although more explicitly, they're probably talking about, as he says, about the specific SSD Super Star Destroyer drive, is that it's for the Eye of Sion. So, but he can't reveal that.
No, of course.
Right. So Hera spots a hyperdrive core. Apparently it's from a Super Star Destroyer, which is also cool. Hera doesn't believe that the New Republic Defense Force is building anything as big as an SSD, which, is really cool that it comes from her. Of course, she would know that. So that's, I think well aligned and kind of a cool, like, thing that she could, like, thread that she can pull on. But we know that the Starhawk is in development at this point. We've never seen it in live action. But it's about as big as a regular Star Destroyer, if I'm not mistaken. It's not nearly as big as a Super Star Destroyer. But when they say it's classified, I was thinking, maybe because it actually is being built in secret, the first iteration of the Starhawk, made from deconstructed Imperial Star Destroyers, that could be what they're alluding to. But it's unclear. So, by the way, the Starhawk, this kind of like New Republic designed ship, it's got a big, massive beam at the front of it. It kind of looks like a big gun, but it's a ship. It's kind of a stupid design, to be honest, and doesn't really, in my opinion, it doesn't really, like, it serves as kind of this, like, their own kind of style super weapon, essentially. Anyway, so she's like, it's not that big. She says there's this whole argument over what's classified. So they ask a protocol droid for assistance, and while that's happening, they ask what other types of droids that they have on staff. We hear about, like, binary load lifters and other, protocol droids. I love, by the way, first time for a long time ever, they were like, well, hey, we don't know what's the protocol here, so we should ask the protocol droid. I think that's fun, right?
Like, actually asking them to do their job instead of just being like the translator.
Person, a waiter.
Yeah.
Right. So he says that they have all sorts of droids, but no hunter-killer droids, no HK droids. He's like, I think not, which is such a funny way to read that line. I love it. So, funnily, though, the protocol droid spills the beans, right? It says, like, I saw one of those the other day.
I love how it just, like, tattles, but in, like, the most innocent way.
Right. Oh, why didn't you file a report? He says, right? Anyway, turns out that hunter-killer droid, it's leaving on the ship that's carrying the Super Star Destroyer drive right now, right? You better go catch it. And so Hera tries to order them to call the ship back to port, but the operators are like, oh, we can't. We already gave it clearance, which is, like, the funniest kind of, like, like, hands-off type thing you can do, right? But then we find out that all these operators are all loyal to the Empire, and they try to assassinate Hera. Ahsoka takes them out pretty quickly and easily, and then we kind of get into this big action sequence that, like, basically ends up most of the episode here. So Hera goes for the Phantom. Ahsoka breaks the glass and heads on foot to try to catch the ship before it can get away. She gets intercepted by Merrick, that mystery Inquisitor, has the Inquisitor blade, which is interesting considering the timeline, right? Inquisitors were around in the Imperial era when the Jedi were being hunted. This is many, many years later than that. What an Inquisitor is still doing around is in and of itself interesting. We also don't know anything else about this character, so we shall see. Probably not Ezra, though.
No.
So, anyway.
Scratch that theory out.
It would be cool if it was a character that we recognized. It could be, who knows. So anyway, she's intercepted by Merrick and an HK droid. Meanwhile, Hera takes the Phantom with Chopper. So we see Chopper in his full glory here. Chopper being the astromech droid from Rebels, who is very moody.
Love it.
Yeah, really nailed Chopper here. So there was always a Chopper droid that was made for live action for Rebels Recon, which is the YouTube show that was a pairing with Rebels. But that same Chopper appears in Rogue One, in a background scene, the same scene that Harrison Dula is mentioned in. They obviously did some modifications to Chopper for this show. They made his head the ability to turn left and right, which he can do, like, up and down, boop, boop, boop.
Yes.
Which you can do in the cartoon, and is able to be a little bit more emotive, has more of mobility options, right? His like arm can do more
His
stuff.
arms are so good. Like they did
Yeah.
such a good job because Chopper's so animated with his little robot arms in
Yes.
Rebels. So if you like don't have that in live action, like you have to have it. It's just
Here's
it's part of him.
my one gripe, okay?
Okay.
When they make the chopper noises, like a rah 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 rah
Yeah.
thing, it sounds too much like I know what they're trying to say. Especially like if on rewatch, it's like, did you go through my stuff? Is what he's saying.
Yeah.
And what
yeah.
he sounds like it's is what it sounds like. And it's
He's
like
kind of always been like that though. He does
Really?
that in Rebels. It's like that too. If you already know,
I feel like it was more subtle than that in Rebels, but maybe I'm just misremembering.
yes and no. There's definitely times where you can tell what he's saying. Like,
right. It's just weird
Yeah.
to me. It's like, is this droid speaking English or what the fuck are we talking? Like, what are we doing here?
that's how they can tell what he's saying.
Yeah. Okay.
I just love the banter between him and Tara too. It's
Right.
so
keep your
good.
lid on, shop. Right?
Did you?
It's
And
good,
just
but-
the did
yeah.
you go through my stuff? It's so funny.
Yeah, I know.
It's
It's
like-
it's like, why do you even have stuff?
He's just like what? It's just like a compartment full of junk.
Yeah, he's like throwing it out as
Yeah.
he's going too. It's so good.
So funny.
Yeah, he's lots of people like Chopper even more than they like R2. And I think when we did our top
He's up
droid
there for
pick,
me,
he's,
yeah.
he's up there. I think R2 still wins, but he's definitely up there. All these astromechs, Chopper, BB-8, R5, R2, all like they're all great. Like their
Yeah.
ability to bring life to these robots essentially. It's buckets, garbage cans essentially with arms.
Yes.
Are pretty it's pretty
Garbage
impressive.
cans.
Yeah. All right, so we get this kind of back and forth. I like it. We get kind of like this action scene on the ground, and then we have the flight sequence. We need more flight sequences. That's just my general opinion. So Ahsoka confronts Merrick. Hera chases on the Phantom. Chopper gets annoyed, but we get the keep your lid on Chop line, which is great. Which bangs the side of the ship. So good. Ahsoka
Yes.
takes out one of the HK droids. The way that they take out this HK droid is so cool because they kind of she uses it as like a human shield. So they end up both
Yes,
cutting it into
yes.
pieces. Again, the way that they do this kind of like droid destruction via lightsaber stuff is appreciated, right? Reminds me a little bit of the Clone Wars era stuff where you could just chop up as many droids as you wanted and no one would care. Yeah. So she splits it apart. Hera continues her pursuit, arguing with Chopper about how they can't shoot it down because it'll crash into the city, and asks him to prep a tracking device, right? But don't miss this time, which is also funny. Chop searches through his things to find the tracker. He's like, I didn't go through your stuff, which is good. Yeah, it's funny. And then Merrick makes a getaway. So Shin comes in with a ship. We get this cool shot of the blaster like shots, and they go like between them
Yes.
as they're running, which is really cool. Merrick throws his double-sided lightsaber, and Ahsoka looks on as they escape, and like just does this kind of like slight body movement, just a little
Love
bit
it.
out of the way, so that the blade will like go past her, which
Yeah.
is so badass, right?
Yeah.
And then they escape, right? Back with Hera, as they're about to clear atmosphere, Hera does this cool barrel roll maneuver to give Chopper the chance to like throw the tracking device, which is
Love
funny, onto the ship. They get it on there just in time as they jump to hyperspace, and basically get the information they needed. So, any thoughts on this kind of action sequence or this
Other
remaining
than
piece of Corellia?
I just had a good time seeing Chopper and Hera back together in live action, and
Yeah,
their interactions with each other just it was perfect. So I loved it. I always love seeing Chopper, though. He's like I said, he's one of my favorites. So
yeah, he's a part of he's the Ghost Crew.
he is my
lovable
favorite
pet,
out of the
basically.
Phoenix Squadron. Out of all of them, he's my fave.
Yeah, fair. By the way, the Phoenix Squadron logo is painted on, or has a
Yes.
patch on Hera's jacket,
Yes,
which is
yes.
pretty cool. So back at Lothal, we're with Sabine, and she is back at her little house in the tower. She pulls out a bag with her Mando armor and places it on the table. Again, kudos to the sound design. Has that same heavy metal feeling that you would expect from Beskar. The only thing that's worth mentioning here is her left pauldron is now decorated with a purgle. It's often her left pauldron has like different
Yes,
like
yes,
designs
she
on it, but
changes
now
it up all the time.
Exactly. So this time it's a purgle. She pulls out her helmet, also redesigned since we last saw it in Rebels. And cut to her. She's in her armor. She's got the helmet in front of her, almost as if she's praying. And she has a knife, and she cuts off her long hair, and signifying that she's kind of like back in the game, as it were. So pretty
Fits
cool.
better
Any,
in the helmet.
any thoughts on that? Yeah, I was like, I was like, wait, how is this gonna work with her long hair? Because I've never really thought about that. I guess you'd like tie it up or something, but it's just easier to just cut it off, I guess.
Definitely. It gave me also like when Kanan does that.
Yeah,
When he
cool.
like sits down, he cuts his ponytail off, and
it's very Jedi,
all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, it is very Jedi thing too, to kind of sit there and meditate, and then, I don't know. Like you said, it's kind of like that symbolism of starting over, starting fresh, kind of thing.
Exactly. Leaving the past behind, right?
Yes, and it is like she says, it's more her with the short hair. So
right,
yeah,
it is. Well, it's just she had short hair for all of Rebels, basically.
Yes,
So quickly back on Corellia, Hera and Ahsoka are cleaning up the mess. The New Republic cops are on scene and arresting the Imperial loyalists. Hera is shocked that they're still loyal to the Empire after all of this, but as Hera points out, or as Ahsoka points out, it's not loyalty, it's greed. Again, these fascist governments kind of create this power vacuum, which allows for people to be abused for the sole enrichment of the few. And which is why you would end up with people in a position where they felt like they had the opportunity to get that power, and there was but in the Republic system, that's not available to them. So, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's this close as you're going to get to the creed from Andor, but still pretty good.
Yeah.
Chopper is also tracking the beacon, but they don't know where exactly yet. Ahsoka returns to her ship. She has a transmission. It's Sabine. She says she's ready, and they fly off. We get a little smile as Hera watches them fly away. I felt a little rushed here, but I guess, all things considered, it's not the end of the world. She's in her gear. She's got all of her equipment ready. And again, you just know. So Ahsoka and Sabine know that the time is right. We return to Lothal, and we get another reconstruction of an animated scene. This time, almost one for one, as close as you can get. This time, reconstructing the very last scene of the finale, the series finale, where Ahsoka arrives on Lothal to pick up Sabine, to go, I guess, presumably look for
right. Yes,
Ezra.
for Ezra. Yeah.
And in this case, it's a little bit different, right? The lighting's different, where it's like sunset, dusk type timeline, time of day. Her armor's slightly different, and Ahsoka's not wearing her white robes and it has the big staff. That's really, but ultimately, honestly, that's literally the only difference.
Yeah,
everything else is exactly. She taps Ezra's face on the mural again, and everything almost exactly the same.
I think that's the whole point, though, right? It's like that's probably where her Padawan learning started the first time, right?
Exactly.
And then it didn't work out. They couldn't find Ezra. Like, things just didn't go the right way. But now it's like they can do all the things that they wanted to do last time, or they're closer at least.
Well, or at least they have a different perspective and a different approach. Yeah. I saw some people speculating that maybe this was a recreation of that moment, and this is actually the same moment, just kind of retconned for this thing. But I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I'm a little bit on the fence. This is I'm kind of want to have my cake and eat it too. I like the idea of it being the same moment, and that we're leading up to that moment that we saw at the end of Rebels, and we're getting to see it now from a different perspective. I think that's cool. I know people were giving Filoni a hard time for that because it felt like what the fuck's the point? But I also like the idea of, as you mentioned, they had this experience once, it didn't work out, but we're going to try it again.
Yeah.
And that it's a reconstruction in that way. So I'm actually kind of either way, I'm fine. I think it's kind of weird if it is the exact same moment, why you wouldn't just, why is her pauldron different? Why is Ahsoka wearing different clothes? Why is it a different time of day? All those things become question marks when they didn't have to be, right? So I feel like it's a intentional callback, but not a recreation. It's not the exact same moment.
Yeah,
although, interesting idea.
I wouldn't think it was the same one. No.
Yeah. Okay, so they leave. They find out that Chopper's figured out where the ship went. It's on a planet orbiting Cetos, orbiting the planet Cetos in the Denab system, and they immediately leave. And we get the line, "Take us out, Padawan," and we jump to hyperspace, and we get the jump to hyperspace with the camera spin move, which is always a classic Star Wars thing. Although my TV can't handle that.
What?
It looks because my TV is an OLED. It has motion blur problems. Its refresh rate is so fast that motion blur doesn't really happen. So when you have that spin move and those stars kind of like spread out and kind of look like they're smeared,
Yeah.
they're spinning. For me, it just looks like a bunch of tiny little dots of stars kind of turning. Really, it just looks weird.
Oh,
it doesn't.
weird.
It doesn't work for me. My TV is great. It's amazing at everything. It just doesn't handle that specific challenge very well.
Well, it sounds like it sucks to me.
Yeah, it sounds like you don't know what the hell you're talking about. But I guess it worked out for you, so nice. Must be nice.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we quickly return to Cetos. We get a cool shot of the hyperdrive that they stole being installed on a giant hyperspace ring with Morgan Elsbeth on board the bridge, which is a shot that we've seen in the trailers. She receives a transmission from Balin and his team. Apparently, the Eye of Sion is almost complete, which is, of course, what they'll use to deliver Thrawn from exile. Balon is worried about Ahsoka. He senses that, quote, "her presence in the Force is elusive, yet her determination is vivid."
Yes.
She is coming. What a great line.
Very, very cool.
So he doesn't know exactly what the plan, but he knows that they have limited time. They have to move, right? Morgan reminds him that they can't allow anything to prevent the journey, right? That's what he's being paid for. You can't let Ahsoka stop this, which Balin basically says, it would be a shame to kill her with so few Jedi left.
Yeah.
Which is where, again, you get this like cool balance of like, does he? So I guess he does have a bit of a sentimental side.
Yeah.
Which
an interesting conflict there. Yeah. I thought that was cool too. I was like, oh, okay, so he's not just like straight up like kill all Jedi and whatever.
He
I was like,
hate the Jedi like a lot of former Jedi who turned bad. I hate the Jedi Council. Feel like they abandoned them. All that stuff. This feels more nuanced than that, which is interesting. He obviously has a connection to that. Does feel like it's a shame to kill. Although I love how he kind of like coldly says it's not sentimental, it's truth. Right? There's not a lot of Jedi left. It is a shame to kill them, and there's so few of them left.
Yeah.
It's just interesting. It's just an interesting dynamic. I want to know more. Anyway, cut to credits. That's episode 2. I should mention the credit sequences have this cool like gold and blue motif where this line is drawn between stars and galaxies and stuff. It's cool. It's like this path. What do they call it? The path to blah blah blah.
Paradania?
Paradiso.
Yeah, something like that.
Right. So anyway, I thought I should mention that, but that does it. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
My only final thought was I thought the way that the witches' holograms, it was cool.
Oh yeah, they look different. They're like
different. It was like it fell to
beads.
The ground. It was neat.
Yeah. Like little points, little dots.
Yeah, don't know what that was, but it was cool. It looked like sand.
Yeah, it's just a different tech. Which,
it was just really cool to me.
Yeah, and it gives you a more vivid look at the people. They look more. They have more color.
Yeah.
There's a green tint to the whole thing, but it's still good.
But I mean, like I think they were a solid opening 2 episodes.
Oh, great! Yeah,
I'm not like sitting here wanting more. Not that I'm not wanting more. But
Whoa!
I mean,
I'm wanting more.
I'm not sitting here wanting more from those episodes. Is what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I felt like they did a really good job. Yeah, it was. Yeah, to me, 10 out of 10.
They're very good. I would say the first episode's a 10. The second one's like an 8.5. Is how I feel.
Fair enough. Yeah.
And like, it's tough. Star Wars is an interesting place. It felt like things were in a lull there. We needed something that was really going to hit, and I feel like this hit. So absolutely. I'm feeling confident about the rest of the series. Looking forward to covering it. Any other thoughts we have, we'll cover in the next episode or the episode after that. There's be lots of speculation and things that we learn and all sorts of stuff over the next couple of weeks. But we've been recording long enough, so thank you for everyone who has stuck around this long. I know it's a double episode 2-hour breakdown. It's basically we did a scene by scene breakdown of an entire movie, essentially. So again, appreciate the patience there, and we'll be back next week. Reminder that the schedule might be a little bit different depending on my ability to get away. I'm going to be camping, so my connectivity is going to be not great. How am I going to watch the show? Is all lots of question marks. So we'll see. We might have to bump it and do another double the week after, but we'll see. Stay tuned to the Twitter at Tower Babblecast on Twitter to keep up with what's happening, the latest. If you are a patron, keep an eye on the Discord. That is going to be your best bet to keep up with that as well. And if you want to become a patron, patreon.com/Tower Babblecast. Help keep the lights on. There's a lot of work that goes into these long episodes. So again, it's appreciated. All the support. It means a lot. So good to be back. Exciting to have this great series here to sink our teeth into. And we'll be back very soon for Ahsoka Season 1, Episode 3. And we'll talk to you soon.